There we go. The broadcast is live. Here we are tonight. Whew,
Yay.
I just finished getting some stuff out for Bad Idea. Well, not quite. Just it's going out Tuesday. Hello, guys. Have to work late, so I'll check the rewind while I organize comics tonight. All right, Mr. Gretzky.
I just realized if Gus is going to show up, we're going to cut his work in half.
Yeah.
He's going to have to come up with two names for us instead of four.
Wow. How often do you organize comics? Because I never do. I mean, I organized my comics,
I go through
30 years ago, and I've been using the same organization ever
I go
since.
through bouts of it.
Yeah.
I'll get it where all organized where I want it, and then not really pay too much attention to it for, say, like a couple years or more. And all of a sudden, one day, it's like the bug just hits you. It's like, I got to organize. So it comes and goes.
See, I don't even, what I do is, so sometimes I have to move things around because, let me show you
Right.
Over there, Homer and Marge, howdy, there we go. He cut his worth in it. Oh, right over there are comics on a shelf, and there's more comics on a shelf. We're going to get the window here.
Right.
And usually what I did, I have this bottom shelf that's right near my mic, that's down the bottom near the red Afghan. Mm-hmm. That's my comic collections that are live. Sort of the ones that and being that I'm an indie guy, and it's like usually things are in alphabetical order, but the way I have it's like I don't collect Marvel comics anymore.
Right.
So I got one shelf full of Marvel comics, and almost nothing goes in there.
Understandable.
I heard Action Lab is having issues with creators and getting books out. Oh,
I haven't.
I have not. I haven't much Action Lab. Yeah.
Except I did hear one thing that. What's the new venture that they're trying to put together?
That's the
one I can't remember.
All of a sudden, I can't remember the name either. The one that the writers signed up for.
Yeah, exactly. That they're trying to go after bigger writers and offer bigger contracts to lure them away from their regular publishers.
Mm-hmm.
God, that's going to drive me crazy. What's the name of that thing?
All of a sudden, I can't remember. But anyway, back to my not organizing comics. What it is it's like I have that one live area, and the rest of my collection is kind of dead in that it doesn't grow any bigger. So I don't need more shelf space. I don't need more shelf space on my Marvel shelf.
Right.
Because I'm not buying any new Marvel comics. Same with DC, mostly.
Right.
So there's like just a couple of areas where I put new comics. Mm-hmm. And when they fill up, I have to I either have to get rid of stuff or get a box and stick other comics in there. So what I do is go to the comic shop, get my comics for the week, read them once, read them twice. And after that second read, whatever comic I go over to the shelf and I put it in its spot. So it's like my comic collection is always organized. And I also enter the comics, my new comics, in a database I have. I used a FileMaker Pro database for years, but I had to switch over to a numbers database because I don't have FileMaker Pro anymore.
Me and Tim both used to use a website that was called Comic Book DB, which stood for comicbookdatabase.com.
Right.
But they stopped. I don't know if went out of business, but they stopped doing whatever they're doing. I don't know if they're going to return. So I exported all that data to an Excel file.
Yeah.
And then I got another new, it's not new, but it was new for me at the time. It's a program that's called Comic Base.
Okay.
Which is expensive.
Yeah.
But it's a really powerful database. You can do all kinds. I mean, you can make pivot tables if you want to. So I have a majority of my comics entered there. I don't have them all, but I have about 9.
I've never wanted to rely on something like that, only because then they have my information hostage. If they go out of business, all that time I spent.
Not on this system. That data stays in the cloud and also stays on my hard drive as well.
Well, I'm just saying though, but
right.
I used to use a books database where I could put all my trades and stuff is.
Right.
They were a little app that I used maybe 10, 15 years ago. I don't even know how.
Mhm.
They stopped making they stopped making the app. They stopped supporting it. So all that time, and there was no other app used that data. So all that time I took to enter books into there is now I'll have to enter them into some other. So that's why I liked FileMaker Pro or now Numbers.
Can you export that data into an Excel spreadsheet?
No, I could not export it into anything. That's just it.
On this,
and if I'm going to export it into an Excel spreadsheet, why not just use Excel? That's kind of and Numbers is Excel for the Mac, so it's the same. That I'm using Excel now. It's the Mac version. You can export between the two if you want. But like I said, that's what I use now. And I actually know it's funny. Like FileMaker Pro is a real professional, hardcore data making program.
Yeah.
But I got a copy of it like 15, 20 years ago and put all my comics in that.
Right.
I finally reached the point when I got my new Mac Mini this summer that my, FileMaker Pro program is like 8 versions behind and won't run anymore on my new computer. So, and I tried to export it, but it was like too old to export data. So what I ended up doing was downloading the current FileMaker Pro as a demo, opening up my database in it, and exporting it from there as Excel. Because my FileMaker Pro from like 2005 just choked when it tried to export it to Excel. But then the funny thing is, I guess FileMaker Pro now is such an expensive program, and it's subscription based.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of things are going to a subscription model that used to be one and done, just buy it and that was it. Yeah.
That's like all I did was sign up for the demo just to use it this one time. And now I have a salesman calling me. He must have called me half a dozen times to see how I was doing. I'm just like, leave me alone. It could be because I put down Amazon as my business because they wouldn't let you download it without putting a business name in there. So I just put Amazon and kept going.
I wonder what kind of fake business name I could have come up with on the spot.
You know what's funny? My I use whenever I needed a fake name, ancient stone carving guys are turning in their graves. Whenever I used a fake name, I always had one I used, but I didn't know. I'm like, I must know that name from somewhere. But I wasn't sure exactly. I'm like, because the name I would always use was Phineas T. Boggs. And I'm like,
Phineas Boggs, basically. Yeah.
Name just came in my head.
Right.
I'm like, I know I must not have made it up. Pandalay Industries. There we go. Ancient pipe smoking guys are watching this video.
Yes, dude.
But it turns out Phineas, I think it was Phineas Boggs was the name from what was that? There was a show in the early 80s that was like a sci-fi show, sort of like Sliders was later on, with the guy who accidentally killed himself, John Eric Hexholm or something like that. And a kid.
Is it called Voyager?
Was it Voyagers? It may have been Voyager. Yeah. Voyagers. And that character. That character's name was Phineas Boggs. And I'm like,
probably got that name from Phineas Fogg, which is the Jules Verne character around the world in 80 days.
Probably could have.
Likely where that came from.
And it may have even been Phineas, because there was always like, I would always put Phineas T. Boggs. And like, I'm like, that name just came into my head. I didn't make it up. I must have known it from somewhere. It was Voyagers. Yeah. That's funny because when I make something up, I got to make it up. I got to go, no, that's not good. No, that's not good. Oh, that's the one. But when something just pops into my head, it's matter of fact, that's one of the things I learned about, way back in art school. And this has served me well all these years. And I tell my students it too, is when you're thinking of ideas, you're jamming, you're writing, you're coming up with ideas, you're writing a list. Yeah. write everything down that comes to your head, because that way it gets out of your head. And also your first 5 ideas are ones other people thought of already.
Sometimes, yeah.
Often it happens where because an idea jumps into your head and you're like, oh, this and this and this and this. And you're like, you know what? That came a little easy. I bet that's an idea I saw or heard somewhere else.
I've actually,
often the case.
I didn't do it on purpose, but I let the sales out of somebody's wind once, and they had an idea for stories like, hey, this, and this happened. Like, well, you realize it's already been done by such and such. And they're like, man, deflated just like that. I'm like, I didn't mean to burst your bubble, but I just did your homework for you.
Yeah, like I said, I always tell my students that I'm like, just, your first ideas are often, they're the ones everyone thinks of first. That we're just human beings. That's the way our brain. When you have to think about, an idea for a man who swings from the trees, Tarzan might come to mind. There's Paolo.
I think we might have talked about this on the show before, but Tarzan was the first multimedia licensed.
What's up, guys?
Character.
Hello there, Paolo. Yeah, you mentioned that Burroughs really licensed out Tarzan. And people who've read too much are tough on young writers. They are. I've seen even like my friend Rob, who I've met at the comic shop, who I meet at the comic shop. He's my one friend from high school. We meet at the comic shop every week, usually. And he's read a lot. I mean, a lot of science fiction, a lot of fantasy. Most of my reading these days for the last, 30 years has been nonfiction. So he's always like, he reads some comics. He's like, oh, that's just like this one. Oh, that's just like that. Oh, that's just like so-and-so. And sometimes I'm like glad I didn't read all that stuff because it's new to me.
Right.
Ellie Collins, 80. Conscience. It's Bart.
Don't have a cow, man.
See, where have you been on YouTube lately, pal?
Yeah, yesterday, Mind the Comics had his monthly show, the Heralds of the Ninth Art, and on Wednesday I was on the Graphic Man with the flower-colored fossils, and I was showing people stuff like Secret Agent Corrigan and Big Ben Bolt.
Now, speaking of Ben Bolt, oh man, hold on! Don't tell me it's right on the tip of my brain, but I can't get it. Did John Cullen Murphy draw Big Ben Bolt?
Yeah, he did. He's the co-creator. Al Cap's brother, Elliot Kaplan, was the writer, and Cullen Murphy was the artist.
I didn't realize Al Cap's brother wrote it. That's
interesting. Because I sometimes when I see these reprints of comic strips, and we had a lot of magazines in Portugal that lived on these comic strips. They would get the rights to an old one, 2 or 3 years old, or sometimes they wouldn't get the rights. They just get the art, and they would publish it. Wow. And that's And I was commenting this on one of the show, or maybe on both. Superhero fans don't really get into these adventure comic strips. And here in Portugal, my generation grew up reading superheroes because we had the Brazilian comics. But those who were 10, 20 years older than us, they hate superheroes. They think they're stupid, but they love Mandrake. They love Prince Valiant, and stuff like even stuff that's less known nowadays, like Corrigan and Big Ben Bolt. Right. They loved it. They grew up on that. But even though it's kind of the same storytelling language, because in the end we're always talking about adventure stories, and we have a lot of interchangeable artists. Like the Ben Bolt book I showed was signed by Gray Morrow and Neil Adams. Okay. So it's the same people.
That's why advertisers want to get people young too, because most people never change their tastes. It's crazy to me. Even like American superhero fans talking about how comics suck these days. They mean their Marvel comics, or they mean their DC comics.
Yeah,
it's like their tastes. They never break out of their tastes.
Yeah,
and I think that's what it is a lot. If you it depends on what you read. If you read the adventure strips young, you still like them 40 years later.
Yeah.
But it is hard, and even I, who am right now a lot more open to slice of life comics than I would be 20 years ago, I see myself being drawn to the superheroes. Maybe they got it right this time. Maybe they're back to what I loved. They're safe. I know what they're like, and when I go to the stuff that I know what it's like, but it's not how I know that it's supposed to be. It gets me angry. And then, luckily for me, I learned how to look around for other stuff.
Yeah,
and
I like looking around for other stuff. I like finding new stuff, but most people don't. I mean, I've recognized that over the years. Is I like no matter what it was. I'm one of those people who goes out and likes to find new stuff, but most people don't want to do that. It's too much work.
I'm the exact same way, because I hear time and time again. Music is a good example of this. Like, bring up that the band is on tour, they had a new album or whatever. It's like they're still around, and I'm like, just because you gave up 20 years ago, don't mean they did.
Mm-hmm. Well, when it comes to music, and it's kind of the same with comics, in that I always say people's musical tastes are defined when they're young. That's when music finds you. That's when the music is marketed to you. And when you're 40, they don't market music to you anymore. The general pop. It's the same. When you're young, the superhero comics find you. To the extent they do these days. Not that they do. They used to a lot more. But when you're 40, you either have to go out and find, even 30. You have to either go out and find your own comics, or keep reading the same old ones that you don't like anymore. And people often choose not to read any comics anymore, or read the same old ones that they don't like.
Right.
I like slice of life for a while and then got bored with it. It's mostly people in their 20s and 30s, it seems. Oddly, I can accept youthful silliness and superheroes now more easily. That's because you're seeing the youthful silliness through the eyes of your daughter.
Well, also for me,
I've noticed that when people have children,
they start watching the Frozens and the Aladdins, and
they become more open to youthful silliness stuff. Even if, like, happened with Sleepy Reader, he's reading that stuff with his daughter, and even if she moves on from it, he's now come more open to that because he liked that stuff, and he liked that stuff. And I've seen it in other comic book parents too.
Yeah, in my case, it's more that I stopped reading stuff because I thought it was childish and silly. Of course, I was a teenager, and so when teenagers think that they're smart. And nowadays, when I learned to rediscover how good Disney comics were and other comics for children,
right?
Yeah, because if comics for children are good, they're not for children; they're for everybody.
Right.
Hergé had a saying that Tintin was for kids aged 7 to 77. Right. And if you can hold on to, if you can do something that's appreciated by all of these age groups, you're doing something right. So when I got back to Disney, I finally understood what it is that I really liked, and thinking that I'm not going to read this because it's funny animals. No, that's a stupid idea. Which I needed to put behind. So I can appreciate more what is silly or what seems silly, because I'm more aware of what the story is trying to tell.
Right. And I think really having kids and reading comics with your kids for a lot of people really does open up the door to the youthful imagination. Because usually at some point we get tired of childish things, and we're grown, when we're teenagers, we're grown-ups now. We don't want that kid stuff anymore. And sometimes that sticks with, for some people that sticks with them. For most it sticks with them, but not for everybody. But
it's kind of like how all kids, they'll draw up until a certain age, and then like a lot of fall out of that.
But often when you have your own kids, it comes back. All of a sudden, you're looking at it through their eyes, and you're like, "Oh, this is pretty good stuff. I'm enjoying this." And then even when they stop reading it, you're like, you can still see it through your own eyes. You've relearned that through their eyes.
And then you have to listen to Baby Shark, and then you get depressed.
And speaking of the creative process, I only got 3 after my 12 comic book week last week. I only got 3 comic books, and one of them was this, The Me You Love in the Dark. I'll first of all say I hate this cover. I hate all cover that is giant blocks of type and no art, even though there's a little bit of dark art back there and a candle. I'm just like, this is proof that if a comic's on your pull list, the cover doesn't matter. But if this wasn't on my pull list, I'm not buying this just for
that. Really looks more like a paperback cover.
Yeah, it's just
on the 70s, shall we say.
I just don't like it. But this, I really like the art. It's Scotty Young is writing it, and Jorge Corona is drawing it, and Jean-Francois Beaulieu is coloring it. And I really like the art and storytelling. And I don't know how close I got on Beaulieu.
It's pretty good.
Hey, but at least I got Jean-Francois. I remember that from my French class. But I really like the art and storytelling in this, but the story itself is a little well, first of all, the story itself is really thin, and it's about an artist with artist block trying to paint, and she's talking to a ghost in the house. And I like the script, and I really like the art, and I really like the storytelling. The one thing I don't like about it is it perpetuates the sort of art as magician myth, which is understandable. Because watching somebody make art is boring. I mean, Frank Frazetta made some of the most exciting, paintings that people like. If you were to watch Frank Frazetta paint one of those, you'd be bored out of your mind. Because, he's got to do his research. He's got to do his sketch. Doing art is very methodical generally. Got to do his sketches. He's got to blow up his drawings. He's got to do his color sketch. He's got to start the painting, and until the last 5% of the painting, it doesn't come together as the painting.
You mean you don't have a flash of inspiration and you immediately come up with a masterpiece?
No,
imagine that. It doesn't work like that.
He would have a strict deadline he'd have to meet. He'd be out playing stickball with the kids until 3 hours before the deadline, and come in and make a masterpiece just like that.
I am well aware that there's nothing better for inspiration than a deadline.
Some people are like that. Well, especially illustrators. I mean, being an illustrator is different than a fine artist in that you've got a deadline, usually. And she's a fine artist, and she doesn't really have a deadline, but she's got a show coming up. That's when you have a fine artist, you always have a show coming up, and you don't have the paintings for it. And you want to do something different. I mean, it's the story isn't anything new, and she sits down in front of her painting with a brush and just starts painting. Which, once again, I understand it for storytelling, but sometimes it's just kind of like it doesn't work like that. But I know if you show how it really works, everybody's going to be bored. What a sleepy reader have here to say to us. Then the kids become teenagers and sneer at Tintin. Yeah, right. Exactly. And then it's not until they have kids that they stop sneering at Tintin. It's the cycle. How come this isn't clicking on his next one? The gigantic titles on covers start to feel like they're just given. Yeah, that's just it. It's like we've decided covers don't matter. And to an extent, they don't, because this was already on my pull list. But still.
Since a lot of these comics only sell, the shop will only order them if somebody puts them on a pull list. Yeah, so why bother with the cover?
Yeah, I definitely understand it.
Especially because I've seen a lot of people say that they don't care what's on the cover.
Yeah.
And they don't agree that covers are supposed to be an instrument, a sales instrument designed to appeal to you buying the comic. Which I suppose is that maybe some people in the industry have been away from dealing with regular people for so long that they don't even remember how to do the most basic of marketing, which is the cover is there to sell the book.
Right.
That's
Maybe the cover on the comic itself won't sell the book, but showing that cover every place else. Just if you have a good cover to show on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, like if you saw this on Twitter, who cares? You're going to pass it right by in an instant.
Do you think that comic is made more for a female audience? Because it kind of, I think I've kind of noticed that nowadays books that cater to a female audience are less likely to have actual pictures on the cover.
Could be. I don't know. I mean, it could. I don't see this. I mean, it's about a woman. She's painting. I don't think there's anything particularly female about it so far, besides the protagonist.
I might be wrong. I don't think publishers are going for gender these days as they are for certain age ranges.
I think they're going for gender too, in a sort of superficial way. I only say that because someone I was working with at Bad Idea said something about The Lot. There was something in it that was kind of iffy, and they're like, and this is supposed to be our female book. I guess because it's got but there's nothing particularly female about it in that it's a horror story. But I guess since it's got a female lead and it's not superheroes, that might be what a female book is.
It seems to me that publishers are really going after the young adult market these days.
Oh, the young adult market is the gold mine.
After Harry Potter came along, everybody focused on that age group.
Right.
Yeah, and since Harry Potter, what of that market sold anything that's worth remembering? The thing about books is that you don't actually have this market that springs up. What you have is one book or one series which becomes a runaway hit, which is what happened with Harry Potter.
One also, huge one and 1,000 teeny tiny ones.
Yeah.
That way for years.
And what Sleepy says here, he's right. The Scotty Young is an artist who's writing this story. But I think that's the sort of artist as magician is our favorite, or is the public's favorite artist story. And there is no other artist story but artist as magician, besides artist as asshole. But usually he's a magician asshole. If you look at in general, in the general public, whenever there's an artist in a TV show or something, he's the asshole. Is that for Purple Miss making? Yeah.
Well, that
Frank Frazetta was an artist as magician kind of guy.
The thing about Frazetta, though, is most of these stories aren't coming from Frazetta. They're coming from other people that watched him do that work in front of them.
Yeah, but you can't do that work without doing the legwork.
No.
Frazetta had reference and preliminary sketches, and I'm sure he'd let you
years and years and years. So. Yeah.
Knowing Frazetta is the artist and magician guy, he would probably let you watch that last 5% when it all comes together. Because that's the best part to let anyone watch. Because one of the
most interesting guys to watch doing things like that is James Gurney that did Donutopia.
Okay.
Because he's done some instructional books and things, and he's got a blog, and I don't remember what it's called. Very into the whole, I won't say deconstructing, but exposing or showing the audience how things like that are done. And it's fascinating to watch some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He goes into depth about this is why this is done in a certain way.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Caroline. Daisy. She's watching us tonight as she's recovering. If you publish a porn magazine with a cover like that, you could read it anywhere. Hey, there's an idea. My daughter and her friends are still reading the Harry Potter babies. Okay.
The story is over. You can pick up all the books and read from beginning to end.
But are they reading babies?
Yeah, there have been a bunch of runaway series for adults since Harry Potter. Yeah, but usually there's one in 1,000 other not Harry Potter.
Yeah, and those series, I think they're the ones that got turned into movies, right? Because even the book sales are kind of banking on the success of the movies. And you know how Hollywood is. They have one successful book series that is optioned into movies, and then you start optioning other book series to turn into movies.
And
But
everything else is a remake.
The Sleepy Reader's comment here: Jared should take a magician asshole persona and then quadruple the parties every penny. That reminds me of I can't remember his name. I have a cousin, my cousin George, who does toys. He's one of these guys who's in the toy industry. He's sculpted toys. He's done things for movies. Like I think he did Thor's belt for the first Marvel movie. So he makes toys and things mostly, and has made special props too. Yeah. And he used to have a show with his first wife, October, called Toy Break. And every week he'd have he and his wife, who was also his ex-wife now, who was also in the toy industry, would have their toy friends on, and they'd talk. And there was one guy on there, I can't remember his name now. He was always funny. He was another toy maker, another toy guy. Matter of fact, he was on, the second season of that Bravo artist show they had a few years ago, which was like a competition show with artists.
Was it makeup artists or just visual artists?
Visual artists. Okay. Different. They had to come in and make a painting or make a sculpture or something. But anyway, this guy said, I cannot remember his name, but he was telling his story once. And he goes by some toy, I forget what name. And he's like, I was just a regular guy, nobody cared. And he started calling himself a supervillain. And he came up with a supervillain name and sort of had this supervillain persona. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden he got hot, and everybody wanted his toys, and women wanted to date him.
Right.
He was like, it was just crazy. So that might not be bad advice, Sleepy.
It's kind of like if you say Prince Rogers Nelson. Does anybody know who you're actually talking about?
Who?
Exactly.
Might not be seeing them, but ask any tweener, and they're going to stuff like school. Yeah, I know there's a bunch of hot stuff, but most of it isn't that.
I noticed the ones that got made into movies with 19 years old pretending to be 15.
I don't know. Caroline's typing so much, we may as well invite her on.
But I already came up with the great asshole persona for you as an artist. You'll put on your hat, and you will wear a white suit with no shirt, Bootsy Collins style shades, and you will fake a French accent, and you will call yourself Jared. Only one name, Jared.
Yeah, Jared.
That sounds like a version of Elton John.
Rogers Nelson was in Black Sabbath, right?
Damien, we're going to have a talk. Okay. Jeez.
Purple Sabbath. But I recommend the Me You Love in the Dark. I know I'm complaining about the cover and the artist as magician plot, but I really like this. I mean, just the script is really good. I really liked last issue was a lot of interest. This issue, we had a lot of dialogue between the artist and the ghost or whatever it was. Whatever, we don't really know if it's a ghost not or some strange entity. And that was really well. I must say, I liked Scotty Young's dialogue. I just like the art and storytelling. And this is art too that I found this. David Yurkovich is my perfect example. I don't know if you guys have ever read Death by Chocolate or Threshold.
I've heard of Death by Chocolate, but I wouldn't have recognized the creator's name.
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s. I don't think he's been around in a while. One of these indie self-publishers from the 90s. But there are some guys and David Yurkovich was when I first noticed it. Yeah, he was like kind of the first guy in that. Who when I flip through their work, I go, that's okay. It really doesn't grab me.
All right.
But when I read it, I'm completely enthralled. So it's kind of like there's some guys who I don't know. It's something about their and this I'm just kind of looking at it and showing it, and it's not really impressing me that much as I look through it. But reading it is really good. So I'm not sure if this guy falls into that category. I haven't seen enough of his yet, but there's some guy, like I said, David Yurkovich is I love his stuff. But just looking at it and flipping through it, it doesn't grab me. But when I sit down to read it, it's like I'm just completely absorbed. It's wonderful. Daisy wants to see in that outfit.
I have great ideas, and this proves that if people just listen to me, they'd be making a lot more money. And you just lost $20.
So are you saying you don't listen to yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to make money for myself. I know how to make money for others.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. The Me You Love is a very pleasurable read. Definitely one to pick up.
Taken out of context, that's a very strange sounding sentence.
The Me You Love in the Dark. That's a strange title, but I think they're going. I think it was Boom was having a lot of success with those long titled books, like Something is Killing the Children, and there were a few more. So I think people are opening up to the idea. Is Kobasic coming on tonight? I sent him an invite, but he just sent me a message that says, "Thanks, I'm going to have to work. I'm going to have to work this around the weeks when I don't have therapy." So I guess he's not coming in tonight, or when he. Something like that. I don't know if this is his therapy or this is not his therapy. One or the other.
Maybe it's
he's not making it tonight.
Maybe we're the reason he needs therapy.
That could be it. And I got this week's Comic Shop Weekly with the Heathens, which I thought was another female pirate comic. When just reading the lead, like Pirate Queen, Bad Ideas just putting out. I remember El Cazador from CrossGen. There's been other like
I remember
female, but this is actually kind of different. You see, who is this artist? This artist
that looks very European.
That's what I was just gonna say. If I hear anything to do with a pirate comic, I always assume that it's a European comic.
It's written by Colin Bunn and Heath Amodio, and I assume since they don't mention the artist until like they don't talk about the artist at all in this little article until like the very last panel, that it's as a sleepy reader likes to read the indicias and point out, a lot of times the artist is the writer is the sole copyright holder on these books, and the artist is just a hired hand. But the artist is Sammy Cavella and Jason Wordy.
Yeah, I've seen Cavella's name around. He's from Finland.
Okay, so he is European, but only one of the characters. The main story in this Heathens, I finally read it, is that some really evil people have broken out of hell. And they're sending a team of semi-evil people after them. So it's like a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, only out of hell. It's got Pirate Queen Ching Shi, leader of the team, Lucky Luciano, Bumpy Johnson. I'm not sure who that is. I've heard that name. Then it's another gangster.
It's another gangster.
Sophia of the Golden Hand. Once again, I don't know who that is, but sounds vaguely Eastern. And Billy the Kid. So that's the team called the Heathens. Oh, and I guess
there's a million people I think of first that I would bring before Billy the Kid. Okay, so and since we have a pirate queen, imagine all the drama that we could get if we had someone like Jean Lafitte or Francis Drake.
But that is
pirates. No, you can't have two pirates because Because they're going to fight among each other.
But one's black and one's white. We got one pirate. We got one cow. So you need a cowboy in there. You can't have two pirates. You need a cowboy and a pirate.
There's no medieval knight. We need a medieval knight in there.
Jason Wordy was the colorist on Resonant. Okay.
How many people outside of people like myself that know medieval history can name a medieval knight from history?
Bumpy was a Harlem black gangster.
You know what? Get the actual Dracula. Prince Vlad Tepes, Prince of Wallachia. I'll bring him.
He might be one of the really evil people who wrote, because this is just the semi-evil people.
But they're gonna save Tepes for later when the book kind of ramps up in its intensity, so they can make it a high stakes book.
You know the funny thing is, Vlad Tepes is actually a national hero in Romania.
Yeah,
but he's only known outside Romania as Dracula from the novel as a vampire, which is kind of ridiculous because as a historical figure, of course, we're talking about Vlad the Impaler, but they do think he's a national hero because he impaled enemies of Wallachia.
He kept Romania being a state that wasn't conquered by somebody else.
Yeah, he saved Europe from the Muslims, I think was his thing.
Yeah, from the Ottomans.
No,
and the Turks. Romania was surrounded by the Ottoman Turks, the Austrian Empire, and the Russians. And the guy managed to hold on to that land.
Right.
Of course, he's a hero.
Yeah, he was a hero of Christmas. That's funny. They forgot the construction worker and the Indian. I like the village people joke. That made me also think that. Do you think politically they could make an Indian who was in hell? Which Indian could they? I don't think they could do that because any Indian they pick. They can't pick a historical figure Indian who's been villainized in the past, but really isn't a villain. Like you couldn't put Geronimo on this team because we don't see Geronimo as a villain.
American Indian. Okay, I was thinking.
Right, yeah, American Indian.
Okay.
But American Indians, as much as they're portrayed as the antagonists in contemporary in pop culture at the time. They're part of the legend of the Old West, and people are as much interested in knowing in them as they are in the cowboys. So it's all even when kids are playing cowboys and Indians, some of them do want to be the Indians.
Well, see, another thing too in pop culture, not so much in actual history, but in pop culture, you have this idea that American Indians are analogous and they're all happy and they all get along with each other, and that's not the case.
Yeah, the whole noble savage man.
Yeah,
looks like Sophia of the Golden Hand was a Russian hustler and high robber. There she is. She looks like she's got that sort of Russian aristocracy dress on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, who's the semi-evil people that are sent after them? That's what I'm curious about.
These are the semi-evil people.
Okay.
This is the semi-evil people team.
Just by that description alone, I'm thinking, well, I'm more interested in the semi-evil people.
Yeah, these are
because the evil people, they're going to go for the obvious. The leader is Hitler. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
And for some stupid reason, I'm sure they're going to put Julius Caesar in there.
And probably Rasputin.
Julius Caesar was a military genius, and he deserves to be recognized as a hero of the Roman Republic.
See, I don't know if you could even put an Indian who worked for the white man as a villain in a book like this. First of all, I don't think there's any famous Indians who worked with not that I can think of, but I just don't think they'll be accepted as evil either.
Probably the one that most people know of that had an association with white folks would have been Squanto.
Yeah, and he wasn't evil in any way, shape, or form.
But you do bring up a point that today's climate is so politically charged that I'm not sure it would be worth the headache of just even talking about it.
Right, Nemo. He was an Indian, not an American Indian.
Well,
right?
he was an Indian after Verne wrote Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank now.
The Mysterious Island.
You get old folk. Mysterious Island. Before that, it was a lot more nebulous as to what country he came from. A lot of people came from Poland.
Okay. No, it was funny. It just popped into my head. I was just watching an old episode of Ellery Queen from the 70s. And they had in it one of the guys who was from Bonanza, I can't remember his name. He was one of the big stars from Bonanza in the 60s. In the 70s, he was on just as a guest role. And it took place like the Ellery Queen, the TV series in the 70s, that was only one season, took place in New York City in the 50s, I think, or the late 40s it was even. And so they were at this English club. This guy, God, I can't remember his name from Bonanza. All of a sudden I saw him there, and he was like in brown face, pretending to be the Indian servant at this club. And I was just like, what? But then that ended up being part of the plot. He really was a white guy pretending to be an Indian servant at the club.
Yeah.
Caesar was against Roman aristocratic class like Cato, which is why the English had him as a villain in their culture. Okay.
Yeah, but nowadays they're going to hate him because he was a conqueror, and conquering's bad.
Yeah. Right.
Also going to hate him. They're really not going to like Alexander the Great.
I don't think that they can make a villain. I wouldn't buy Caesar as a villain.
Mm-hmm. One of the reasons the Romans ran around Europe and the Mediterranean conquering stuff, I've noticed that they added this aversion to human sacrifices. That's why they went to war with Carthage, because the Phoenicians had this reputation for sacrificing children to the god Moloch, and Carthage was established as a colony of Phoenicia.
But didn't they do that from a pizza shop in Washington, D.C.?
And then when they went after the Celts, the Druids were known for practicing human sacrifices, and I noticed that the Romans didn't really like that.
I don't know that the Romans needed an excuse to conquer Carthage or the Celts.
No, they could go to war, and they would have. They could, but they had particular reasons to go after these particular groups, Druidic Gauls and Carthage. Carthage was kind of given that role a bit after the defeat of Scipio Africanus, but they definitely went after the Gauls.
Romans always cast their foes as villains, and that's the history. They got to write the history. So every historian I read says we only get this from Rome, so you might have to take it with a grain of salt, because they always cast all of their.
Not quite. We know from historical. We know from archaeological records that predate the foundation of the Roman Republic that the god Moloch was worshipped in the Near East, and that they used to do human sacrifices to him.
But we also know from the record that the Romans cast their enemies as villains. That's what I'm saying. You can't necessarily take the Romans' word for it that they went to war and defeated these people.
I'm not taking the Romans' word on this. There is actual archaeological evidence for.
No, but you're trying to tell us why this whole thing came up because you were explaining why Rome went to war with them, and I'm saying those aren't necessarily the reasons Rome said they went to war with them is not necessarily the reasons Rome went to war.
Yes, and we know Carthage. We know everyone knows very well that they had a pretty good slice of all the trading in the Mediterranean. So of course they were a rival economic power.
Right, like the United States didn't just go to war with Iraq for the war on terror. You know, that's the reason they used to sell it. Let's say news hitting Portugal say a Canadian group of schools burned thousands of books, including. Oh, I saw that too. I just saw the headline on book burning stuff when some of the it was like Tintin in America was not appropriate, they said, and they ended up having a good old fashioned book burning. Writing about the Huns, the Romans wrote about how they smelled like the spoiled butter in their hair.
Yeah. We know very little about the Huns because as an ethnic group they existed for a very short time, and they were most likely formed of people of very disparate origins who ended up banding together and running around Eastern Europe conquering stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm. The Hun. I love historical comic books too. Which is one of the reasons of Sleepy Reader made Pirate Queen his book of the week this week. Though he said he wasn't completely thrilled by any of them, but it was like I was comparing the two bad idea books, number ones I got last week. One was Monster Kill Squad, and one was Pirate Queen. I thought they were both pretty good, but Pirate Queen was just more my style in that it was historical fiction.
Right.
Monster Kill Squad was pretty good, and it was, a squad of monster killers. But for me can be good or be nice or be bad. But I found this one good because they gave me enough background and enough sort of world building for this monster squad. Because to me, to like a monster fighting book, you have to give me some world building. Like some people just like gratuitous monster fighting, that's a whole genre of its own, and I know people who love that stuff, like the people who love gratuitous zombie books. But for me it has to be Walking Dead sort of with something more than gratuitous zombies. So I ended up liking Monster Kill Squad, but for me it's just like historical fiction is just much, or even straight history is just much more up my alley. Pirate Queen was definitely fun. Just not like a good issue of Ice Cream Man or Nice House by the Lake good. I haven't read Nice House by the Lake. I've heard good things about it, but all those Catholic school kidnaps and murders got the Canadian Indians worked up. Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, but it was pretty much ammo for Catholic run schools back in the day. And even in Ireland there are schools that where they taught orphans. You'll find mass graves.
Yeah, read what was that Joe Sacco book I just got out of the library? The one that Comic Crack and I read. Joe Sacco. Oh, what was the name of it? It was about him interviewing the First Nation Canadians just about that stuff, and you got to hear firsthand how those schools just messed them up in a way that I never, when I think of school, when I think of the ways school mess people up, they're just normal ways, they're sort of the ways I know where people go to school, they don't like their teacher, they don't like, they get picked on, they get bullied, whatever, just the sort of normal ways in our culture that school can mess you up. Right. Well, those, Catholic schools were trying to just get rid of the First Nation cultures. So they mess them up in ways that are just incomprehensible to me.
Yeah, the Catholic Church, when they're put in charge of education, bad things happen, and we already had that evidence in Europe before even there was any massive means of establishing a group school, a education group outside Europe, and meant to educate foreign ethnic groups. So yeah, the whole point that the whole way that Europe got out of the Dark Ages was when the Catholic Church had their role as educators taken away by the various states, and seeing them get the right to do that outside Europe is not only ridiculous, it's shameful for everybody involved.
Paying the Land by Joe Sacco was the name of it. I just looked it up because I couldn't remember. Paying the Land, really good book. Don't expect to sit through it in an afternoon because it's pretty dense and it goes into real detail about these. Because he really, Joe Sacco is a interview cartoonist. So he goes in there and interviews all these people and makes a comic or graphic novel out of it. So it's really interesting though. I liked it a lot, but so I learned a lot of stuff in that book. Like I couldn't even comprehend the way in which these schools messed those First Nations people up.
No.
Yeah. They're still doing it today. So Saskatchewan province gets money for, I guess, taken away from their parents. Wow. I thought they ended it in the 90s. That's kind of crazy. But a first issue that I tried this week that I really liked, but was a little strange, Dead Box. I only had 2 comics on my pull list. It was funny. I only had 2 comics, and they were both second issues. So it's like good thing I put those put them on my pull list. Otherwise, I'd have nothing this week. I liked the art in this one. So because I was just looking through comics on the shelf, trying to find something to buy because I only had 2. And Dead Box is a play on Red Box. So the little blurb on the back is, "Welcome to Lost Turkey," which is the name of the town, where the main source of entertainment is a cursed DVD machine that seems to know more about the fate of its citizens than they do. And who is it? I liked the writing on this a lot. Mark Russell and Benjamin Tiesma as the artist, with Vladimir Popov the colorist, and World is the letterer. But what was really... it's kind of like... I don't know what to... It's kind of like horror Northern Exposure meets Twilight Zone. Because first we've got this town, Lost Turkey.
Yeah.
Okay. And this town is just like and we've got a young girl who wants to go back to, this town is full of weirdos and some kind of horror. And it like doesn't even have Wi-Fi. And it's kind of one of these off the grid towns where weird things happen. But then we've got this, the girl runs this local general store, I guess it is. And there's like a Red Box. And for those of you who don't know what Red Box is, I only know it from the internet. I've never used it. It's like in shopping centers or grocery stores, they have what's called Red Box, which you can rent DVDs from. Mm-hmm. You go in there, you put your card in, you pull a DVD out. Next time you're at the grocery store, you just return it. That's what
basically it's a vending machine, is what it is.
It's a vending machine for borrowing DVDs. Mm-hmm. But in this general store, they have DVDs that no one's ever heard of before. So that kind of has to do with the horror element of it. And half the story is her living in this little horror town, and half the story is what's on the DVD, which is this. Once again, I was like, "That's no way to run a railroad." And the story that I'm going to spoil the story that's on the DVD just because it's so dumb. It was well done though. It was done, but well done. I'll definitely buy some more of this because I liked it. But the story just made me go, huh? The story that was, like I said, I don't know if it's supposed to be. Maybe the story that's on the DVD isn't supposed to. It's just supposed to be weird and strange. So the story that they told us on the DVD takes place in Earth in the future, and we had some kind of radio communication with an alien world, where And we're talking back and forth with this alien world. They're excited. We're excited about it. But they're so far away, we can't get there. Finally, we invented some sort of light speed drive where it will only take 200 years to get there. But since the person is traveling at the speed of light, it'll only be 50 years to then. So we decided we're gonna do this. We Earthlings, we're gonna build this ship. We're gonna send it out, and we're finally gonna meet these people. And so, these alien people. So they were all excited. There was this big contest to see who was gonna get to go. Ba 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 ba. It'd have to be someone young because they got to live 50 years on this ship. And the crazy thing to me is they sent one person. And I'm kind of like, you're going to put... We know what solitary confinement does to people. You're going to put one person by himself on this ship for 50 years? So, of course, by the time he reaches there, he's completely a Looney Tune.
Yeah.
And the aliens, after 200 years of waiting, are like, holy cow, see you guys. They're like totally wrecked. And they like cut off all radio communication with us because they thought Earthlings were Looney Tunes once he reached. And that was like the end of the deal. And I just found that the story was, significantly weird. But I was just, the whole time I was like, you sent one guy?
Well,
shouldn't you be the team?
Well, my look on this, there's two different things I noticed, and this happens a lot in science fiction stories. Why didn't the other culture send somebody to meet him halfway?
Maybe they couldn't. That I could accept.
Fair enough.
Maybe they couldn't. What I couldn't accept is they send one guy.
Well, the other thing that happens in a lot of those stories, too, is when you get to the point, technologically, we can develop faster than warp drive. The possibility exists that you're going to come up with another technology that's going to be faster than that, and somebody out there that's going to get there first before the first guy ever gets there.
They did that in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh,
I'm sure they weren't the first ones. Vance Astro. That's what happened to Vance Astro in Guardians of the Galaxy in the 60s. Gotcha. He was sent from Earth on this 1,000-year journey, and when he got to the end, Earthlings were waving flags.
Right. It's like, where you been? I was like, what?
I would like to check that out.
Kingsport.
His life in Japan, which let's write his name down.
Historical comics and stuff like that. Kingsport brought up a very good point. The early Soviet space exploration program, very, very interesting things were going on. There was some stuff there that would just scare you out of your wits if you knew some of the things they did.
That's why I actually Mark Russell has done Only Begotten Son, Billionaire Island, and the Flintstones. Oh, I remember people liking the Flintstones. Mm-hmm. Billionaire Island, I remember people liking and then not. Only Begotten Son, I don't remember hearing about. Saul Garnell is here.
Hello.
I actually wrote a story, and when we did our anthology, our Kansas Thunder anthology in the late 90s, my friends and I self-published a comic. I wrote a comic for my friend who drew it, my friend Ed. And it was called The Romantics. It was about the first people in space, and they were Russians. And the reason I made them Russians was their seat-of-the-pants space program history. Lots of Soviet with 4 people in a spacecraft, like space for you. Yeah, 4 people end in madness. Well, you don't send one. When you send one guy, you also need only to feed one. Cost goes way up. It does, but you know that one guy's going to go crazy. That's like a fact.
And it's almost, you're also putting all your eggs in one basket, too.
Yes. That one guy dies, your whole plan is.
And then, Hal gets there, and then he doesn't open the pod bay doors, and the aliens don't talk to us anymore.
That's like, what was that movie that everybody liked, The Moon?
That's a good movie.
Mm-hmm. I was just like, that's no way to run a railroad.
It's a good movie.
I didn't think so. I thought it was terrible.
I liked it.
I mean, it wasn't badly done. It was just the whole idea was it's like 80% of the Earth's energy comes from the moon. And they got one guy watching it.
Right.
It's like, really? One guy? I am sure if 80% of the world's energy comes from the moon, you can afford to hire more than one guy to make sure it runs smoothly. That just always bothered me. Yeah, Moon was sort of a comedy. Yeah,
kind of a not as dark a comedy.
Man, as a grown-up child before they arrive anywhere. I'm of the opinion that all exploration should be done by androids. Yes, if we had androids. No, we don't. I hate to burst your bubble, but there are no androids.
Tesla's talking about releasing an android within the next couple of years.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see if he can go to the moon. Yeah, but I enjoyed Deadbox though. Like I said, I'm definitely going to get the second issue. I don't know if I've gotten the. Who put this one out? Is a Vault comic too. Wasn't the art was really nice. There was the guy when he arrived. I don't know what that hole in his underwear is, but like I don't know if it's just going to be more. It's probably just going to be more. Twilight. It's like Northern Exposure, Twilight Zone. It's tales of a weird town in weird DVDs.
Was that supposed to be a gun barrel in there?
A gun barrel? I think it was a hole. I don't think it was a gun barrel. No, it's definitely a hole, not a gun barrel.
Okay, so they show it from the side.
No, not really, but it's stained. They make sure in a couple of panels to show you it's urine stained. Okay. And he smells so badly that they kick him right off the planet. But nice artwork, I have to say. Whoever Benjamin Tiesma is, Tiesma. Not fond of this cover either. Just don't find it striking is all. But it's better than the other cover, which was just the red box. So, but I was glad I got it. A third comic to read. But I saved some of the last comics to read my second reading of this week. Because I'm like, you know what? I only got 3 coming in. I don't have to read all 12 the second time in 1 week. Ooh, I got some more Rip, Read, and Tears set up. Rip, Read, and Slabs set up. Let me share my screen. Do I have it in the right? I just realized I didn't check. Window.
So instead of having an RSS feed, we have an RRS feed.
Yep. Hold on. I got to get it in the right. Turns out, if it's not in the correct desktop, I can't share it. And I don't. Which desktop is it in? Desktop 2. Silly rabbit. Oh, it's not in the right. There we go. Now we got to hit this button, hit that button. Mission. I need mission control. No, I need launchpad. No, I need mission control. That. It's got to go to. Come on, you silly thing. Sometimes this. Let's bring it over to desktop 2. Sometimes these touch things. Oops. Sometimes these touch pads don't work very well. All right, let's try this again.
I hate touchpads.
I don't mind them usually, but sometimes.
The thing about the touchpads, you overuse them because you don't have a mouse, and then they start not working when you need them.
Yeah.
Come on, share screen. There we go. I think we've got our. There we are. Our women of 1971 DC first. There we go. Do you see it? There it is.
Yeah.
There we go. There are women of 1971 DC. One you got to read, one you got to rip, and one you got to slab. I have not read any of these. We got a random issue of Lois Lane. Guess what? She's mad at Superman. We got Emma Peel, Wonder Woman, and her terrible white costume.
No.
And we've got Supergirl, who a whole bunch of super chicks are beating up on.
I would slab Wonder Woman. I would read Lois Lane and I'd rip up Supergirl.
I would slap Wonder Woman.
I just want to know why and what Lois is throwing at Clark there and what he did wrong. So
that's not the game, Sal. You can't rip them all.
I would slap Wonder Woman, read Supergirl, and rip Lois Lane. Because Lois Lane being pissed off at Superman, old hat by that time. She's always angry. She's always angry that he won't marry her, or angry that he will marry her, but now she doesn't want it. I am very interested in knowing who all those super chicks beating up on Supergirl are, and I like and I'm slamming Wonder Woman because I actually like that cover very much.
See, I think I'm going to slab Lois Lane because I bet I can get the highest grade available of that issue because no one slabbed it. I'm going to read Supergirl because that cover intrigues me and rip up Wonder Woman because, I don't know, that Mike Sekowsky Wonder Woman doesn't intrigue me.
I've never really been a fan of Supergirl as a character. I mean, I don't dislike her either.
Nope, that's not the game, Sleepy Reader. You can't read, and read. That's a cop-out. That's not playing the game. We'd read them all if we actually had them, but to play the game with them, we got to read one, rip one, and slab one.
Well, since you brought up that Wonder Woman is in Emma Peel's costume there, would you rather read a Wonder Woman book or would you rather read an Avenger, not Marvel Avengers, but would you rather read the British Avengers book?
I think I'd rather read the British Avengers book just because I never have.
I would probably read that too.
The British Avengers, the U.S. comic based on the British Avengers was published by Dell, so it's probably not very good.
Which means the cover is 10 times better than the interior art.
Yeah, exactly.
They did a recent one a few years ago called Steed and Mrs. Peel.
Yeah. Trademark now.
I've always heard about the unpowered Wonder Woman period. And I've always heard about the unpowered Wonder Woman period and never wanted to read it. Cheese and pickles and mustard too. Hold the mayo. A cheese comment. Rip Wonder Woman, slab Lois, and read Supergirl. He's on the same page as me. Now we're going to have to. Now I might not have the highest grade in slab Lois Lane because Sleepy's
competition
one too. If I have the second highest grade, I'll be all upset. Let me stop Sheen screen. Remove from stream. There we go. Now we're back.
You notice 2 of those 3 covers had no background in them whatsoever, too.
That must have been a thing with DC in 1971.
Just a solid white background.
Yeah, it told me it was still sharing. Okay. I'll set the next one up, but we'll do it later. Ooh, that one's pretty cool. I just wanted to make sure it's set up. Yeah, the last comic I got this week, Michael Moorcock's Elric the Dreaming City. And I think this was only 2 issues, because at the end, it says, end of the first cycle of Melnibone. So I'm like, is there going to be an Elric and the Dreaming City 3? Or are they doing another series? I have no idea. Because how many pages are those European graphic albums? 80, right around there?
It depends on the size. Usually they're 48, 64, or 80. Mostly 48 or 64. Although nowadays a lot of artists are just doing whatever they feel like it.
So this is 30.
Mm-hmm.
Probably was around the same for the other, so probably around 60 pages. So that could have been one graphic album, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder how they're doing this.
Who's the
I would
artist?
much prefer these in the graphic album format. What was that, Scott?
Who's the artist on the Ulrich book?
The artist is, and this is the French version, art by Julien Tello. I like the art.
Yeah, it's not a name I'm familiar with. I was just curious.
Me either.
In this case, it's a case of they being hired for the job, which is not exactly what's normal.
Elric, the Dreaming City, number 2 of 2. So this is the last one. Frank Brunner painting. Oh, that's a Frank Brunner painting on the front. I didn't realize that.
Right, because there's only one cover for the album. So they need a new one for number 2.
He did it in 1978 because the copyright says 1978 and 2021. Yeah. And that's interesting. Frank Brunner holds the copyright on the Elric painting. So it wasn't work for hire.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to remember what publisher might have done that back then. I don't know. Not sure.
I don't either. With thanks to J. David Spurlock and Vanguard Productions.
Yeah, I mean, Spurlock's in the production of a lot of different things.
Elric, La Cité qui rêve.
La Cité qui rêve.
La Cité qui rêve.
Gesundheit.
Editions Genat 2021 by Blondel, Kano, and Tello. All rights reserved.
Yeah. Yeah. Gleneye is one of the big publishers in France.
Yeah.
Okay.
You ever notice that when comic companies do adaptations of Moorcock's other books in the Eternal Champion series, they never sell anywhere near as well as the Elric ones do?
Oh yeah, definitely. Elric is the king. Sikowski art is hard to take, in my opinion. I read most of the depowered Wonder Woman. It started off good till Denny O'Neil left. Yeah. I've never been a Mike Sikowski fan. His early Justice League was fine. I never read a ton of that. But I'm sending my 3 Mint Nova number 1s to get slabbed. May as well. No reason to read them. It's not that good a comic. Why is Lois Lane called Superman's girlfriend? They need to be because that way they could get Superman up front and get it racked with all the other Superman comics. That's why they did that. I'm pretty sure. Get Superman on the cover. He was the star of the show. Titan was publishing a series of Euro Elric albums hardback a few years ago. Wonder if these are new. I think these ones are new French versions. The ones Titan was publishing, I think, were the American ones, the U.S. reprints. At least that's what I could tell from the Titan's website when I looked these up. They already reprinted all the American editions,
but they were doing the French ones a few years ago. Now they can't put them on the website because they don't have the rights anymore.
So Titan comic, but there were different French ones than these ones.
No, it was these ones in the proper size.
That's what Titan did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I thought, from my reading of their website, I thought they published the American ones. And this was their first time publishing the French ones.
Yeah, they may still have the rights for the American ones, but they don't have for the French ones. Because the licensing is different. Moorcock licensed Elric to the French publisher to do one thing, and then whatever license Titan has is to do something else. Of course, Gleneye, they probably have their own contracts regarding who gets to market the licensed editions, because they probably own the art. So if somebody wants to reprint, they have to buy the rights from them, even if they still have to pay Moorcock a percentage of the profit.
I wonder because like I know in American comics, the licensor owns, if it's work for hire, the owner of the property owns the art. Which is why when like Dark Horse got the Conan license, they could reprint all the Marvel books.
Right.
And now Marvel can reprint all the Dark Horse, Star Wars, and Conan stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder who owns this art. Does Michael Moorcock's company own this art, or is it owned by? Copyright and trademark law is so confusing and.
Yeah, and it's not the same for every country, of course. So
no, it's different.
Right. That's why Blaze can publish all that stuff in the European market. Where they have to take Conan's name off of it, though.
Yeah, no, in Europe, no, they can use Conan's name for anything in European market.
Yeah, in the European market, but when they republish it here in the States, they have to take Conan's name off of it. The Barbarian.
Because I think in most European countries, if a work is in the public domain, you can't trademark the associated name. So if you do something with the Three Musketeers, you can't trademark the Three Musketeers because that's the name of a work that's in the public domain. Now, no actual Conan is not the name in any actual story. There's Conan does something in a few stories.
Yeah.
But most of the stories have their own name or without Conan, so it's a little bit different. But being a character, so I'm not entirely sure what happens if you decide to do something just called D'Artagnan. If you want to do the Three Musketeers, although I don't think you can trademark D'Artagnan either. Or you can trademark Phileas Fogg if you want to do something with Around the World in 80 Days, adapting Verne's work.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Because it all gets so complicated, especially over here with Disney changing the rules whenever they want.
Can you imagine being an IP lawyer, and then when Alan Moore came up with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen's, like, I got to research how many characters? Thanks, Alan. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Do. Baby, thanks a lot.
That's speaking of more. That was another thing that was the problem with different copyright laws in European countries and in the United States, because they couldn't publish Moore's Captain Britain stories without his consent in America, and they did. And it's
there
the
was
same
something
thing.
Something with Peter Pan too.
Peter Pan had a special dispensation,
right?
Because a children's hospital is financed by the copyright. By the continued copyright. So anytime you do something with Peter Pan, money goes to the hospital. Although I think they finally let it
lapse into the public, not in the U.S.
That's right.
It's like if you want to publish something with Peter Pan in the U.S., it's in the public domain. In Great Britain, it's under copyright still. That was great for lawyers and pocketbooks. Yeah.
Although the design, which is famous for Peter Pan, is owned by Disney.
Right, that one. If something's in the public, hey, that's Tim.
It is.
Hello. Look who it is. Hey.
What's going on, man?
How are you doing? Good to see you.
Pretty good. I got out of going to the football game that I told you about because I'm going over papers for closing on a house maybe next week. So I like how I read this stuff and I like pretend I know what I'm doing. But
you go,
Yeah, I own two places back in the 2000s. One in the 90s I bought, one in the 2000s, and apparently it's different now. But anyway, what's up, guys? I've been trying to. I hit a link for last week's show out of the messages, so I was just sitting there and I've been sitting there since I got off when you guys showed the Elric stuff. I had you to the side, kind of listening here while I went over the papers and stuff. And I went, take a break, man. And I was just sitting there.
Take a break.
And when you get a chance, I got a real quick comic book story. I did a good deed through work.
Go right ahead. Let's hear. We were just talking copyright law. We may as well go back to comic.
Okay. Well, as you know, I'm a social worker, and there's this kid who had a horrible life. And I say kid because he's in his mid-20s. I got his file, read it, horrible life and all this stuff. But seriously, they gave him to me not only because I deal with the state hospitals all the time, even though they, but the kid is into manga and all the DC shows and all that stuff. So they were like, oh, we want Tim on this one. So as I meet him 3 or 4 times at the state hospital, asylum for all the muggles out there, they don't really call them that anymore. But that's the only place I could hit it off with him. Slightly autistic and a few things, right? And we would take over the meetings because he would start talking about the DC Titans show and all this stuff, and I'm just hanging in there with him. And he tested me one time. He tested me about Nightwing because he popped up on the Titans. And I went, "Are you challenging me, sir?" And the whole room looked at us like, "What the hell's going on? What's happening?" Huh. I was like, "I'll have you know, I have the first appearance of Dick Grayson as Nightwing." And he was just sort of like, "Okay." That's when he started taking me serious. Yeah. Now we get to where I've been the last 2 days. So he gets out in July of this year, and he's 5 hours away. And it turns out when he left, he didn't take all of his stuff. So when I visited him last month, he was freaking out. He was like, "Where's my manga books at? Do you know where they're at and everything?" And I'm just like, "What?" He's like, when he left the state hospital, which is 2 hours from my office, and moved to a place 5 hours from here, somebody got his stuff. So I'm feeling bad for the guy. We all have a comic book collection. Can you imagine? You know what I'm saying? So I track it down this past Monday. I found where it was at. It was actually in a boiler room in one of our buildings. And it's like three luggage bags, a shopping bag, and all this stuff. And he had a Power Ranger pillow. And I'm like, oh, no, he doesn't have his pillowcase. I could feel it. You know what I mean? So it's like 150 pounds worth of stuff. I don't go through his stuff. I respect his privacy. I load that crap up. I drive 5 hours up there to see him like I have to. Mm-hmm. So I've been in Petersburg outside of Richmond for the last 2 days. So I get up there, and he's like running out when he sees me. "Did you find my stuff?" 3 months worried about his collection. And I'm thinking it's just manga. I'm thinking it's just manga books. And I'm not saying it's bad. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But, that's why I didn't really want to snoop. Yeah, no, they hold his. There's a whole process. His stuff was locked up so nobody would steal it because the state anyway. Nobody stole his stuff. Right. So I get up there, and while I'm talking to the house manager, and we meet for like about 45 minutes, he's in his room, and I can hear him. I hear him going through all this stuff. He's got the first room from the kitchen table that we're meeting at in this group home. I go in there. Holy shit. Not only does he have all his manga books and stuff already stacked up, this mother effer has the volume 1 and 2 of the Roy Thomas 1970s Invaders. I ended up talking about the Invaders with this kid for like 20 minutes. And he has some stuff from Ollie's and stuff, man. But like, I don't know how his thought process works. But this kid loves the Invaders. We're talking about Union Jack. And he's a savant. When he reads something, it's like he goes into that world and it's happening. Mm-hmm. He was like, when we were talking about some of the stories, especially with Union Jack, he was reciting them like Hitler was in the room. So yeah, I was like, and he still has this thing where he's just sort of like, apparently he's the only one he knows that reads comics. So I gave it to him. I just shut up and let him feel like the smartest man in the room. I needed that. So, I was like, you got to be kidding me. This guy had like tons of stuff. And then I don't know how he found it up there in Petersburg, but he had a complete collection, a trade though. But it's like an older trade. I looked at, he's showing his video games and stuff in the closet. And he's got the entire Mike Plug trade collection of Man-Thing in a trade I've never seen before.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell you, man. I'm like, this kid has taste. I sort of had the idea that he was just grabbing what he could get because he loves his manga and get the books.
Mm-hmm.
No, man, he knew his stuff on. He's one of those kids. He knows Invaders. He knows Man Thing. He knows manga. He knows the TV show. It's yeah. So yeah, that made the 5 hours worth it. So so driving back today, I just posted the pictures a little while ago, but on the way back though, I stopped in one town. I was in a big town. There was actually guys who were visiting there I was in a rough part of Petersburg, let's put it that way. So I didn't try to get out. But on the way back, I stopped at a Goodwill in the middle of nowhere because I thought I was going to get a drink, something to drink, a little bit of bottled water or something. And I look up, there's like the strip mall, and beside the DMV is a Goodwill. I'm like, what? There wasn't even a sign for the Goodwill, And I go in there and I found like the first 6 Van Halen albums, an Yngwie Malmsteen album, Chicago, Neil Diamond, 50 cents a piece. Even got the Sex Pistols documentary on VHS, even though I already have it on DVD. So I feel like the universe rewarded me when I didn't need to be rewarded. You know what I mean? In my eyes.
Yeah.
But can you imagine having your entire collection in 4 bags and not knowing where it's at? You know what I mean?
That'd be no fun.
Yeah.
That'd be no fun.
I've calmed down now. I've been high on that all day.
I saw several pictures lately of people on Facebook groups that are posting what they used to have before Ida came through.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and they're just water damaged books everywhere.
People in New York City drowned in their apartments.
Oh my God.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Oh, we lost Tim.
There goes the internet.
Yeah, from what I understand, a lot of those apartments were illegally zoned too.
Yeah, they were basement apartments.
Right.
Well, there he is. He's back.
Landlords.
Yeah. He's back. Well, yeah, that's kind of crazy, Besides stuff can you imagine drowning in your apartment? That's just
that's the last thing I heard was some people in New York drowned in their apartment. Then I was kicked out.
Yeah. Like crazy. Has Tim played the Read, Rip, and Slab game? I don't think he has. I don't think he's been on since we invented that game.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the game, Tim. It's like F, Marry, Kill, only for comic books. Gotcha. I show you 3 comic books. 1 you get to read, 1 you have to slab, and 1 you have to rip up.
Gotcha.
So let me.
I think we played this with 2 books a month ago or something. It sounded familiar.
Yeah. So. Here is our. I set up a 1985 Epic Comics version of this.
Ah, Epic, eh? Okay.
Let's see. Come on, share. It's a little slow. There we go. There we go. Those are your 3 issues you have to decide between. We have ElfQuest #1, Swords of the Swashbucklers #1, and The Black Dragon #1. None of them valuable. Mm-hmm. I try to get books of sort of the same value in there.
That's very easy for me.
Yeah. What do you got?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Scott.
I'm going to slab Black Dragon because I already have that one and I've already read it.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to rip up ElfQuest because I've never been an ElfQuest fan to any great degree. And I'm going to read Swords of the Swashbucklers because that looks like the most interesting thing to read, and I've already read Black Dragon.
It's by Butch Guys.
Right. Yep.
The John Bolton artwork in Black Dragon is phenomenal.
How do you drown in your apartment? Wouldn't you just go upstairs? Not if it's a flash flood. You got nowhere to go.
Well, also some of the apartments don't have an upstairs. Well, to go to.
From the left, rip, read, and slab. So she's agreeing with Scott here.
Yeah, I'm also agreeing, although for different reasons. I know there's a modern semi-modern Black Dragon collection. I don't think Swords of the Swashbucklers was ever reprinted as a trade paperback, so I would want to read that one,
Yeah.
and it's Black Dragon, and I'm going to rip this Elf Quest because this is a colored reprint version of the original one, and they had to reformat the stories to fit it in Marvel's 22-page format.
Gotcha.
So they don't begin and end where they're supposed to. The original
okay.
Elf Quest series has 20 issues, but Epic put out 32. There's no new material. They just stop in where they stop and continue the next month.
So
Okay,
the Epic Elf Quest book are reprints, correct?
Yeah, so the original series.
That's why
I didn't even know that. See, if I knew there were reprints, I might not have added this one. But you can always go with my other strategy of if you slab the Elf Quest, you'll probably have the highest graded copy in existence.
The rarity. Yeah, I thought I'm gonna agree with Scott in Palo, but I thought Elf Quest started out as reprints and eventually got to be new material, but it doesn't matter because they weren't on the stands when I was a kid in my town. The Swashbuckler, I have to read it, man, because I've got like the first, 6 of them, and I've already bragged on the guy's artwork in those. It's phenomenal. I mean, it's just, I think it's some of his best work. I mean, he's drawing freaking Clipper pirate ships in space, and it looks great. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And then the Black Dragon, I'd slap that one because I've read it and I've had it. And I have never went back to reread it after all that time. I went without one issue for years, so I didn't read it until I found all the issues. And then when I read it, I was sort of like, "That's it." It suffers from Claremont doing a lot of talking. You know, he likes.
It's kind of bored. It's got nice John Bolton art. You just convinced me.
Really nice Bolton artwork.
You just convinced me. I'm going to rip the Black Dragon, slab Swashbucklers because I like that cover, and read Elf Quest. I don't care if it's a reprint. Yeah, I think I'd rather read a reprint of Elf Quest than Black Dragon #1. I think.
Black Dragon's pretty to look at. I'll go. I mean,
it is. It is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I still have my issues.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I don't have that issue of Elf Quest, but I have the first one in black and white. Some later printing of it. I ordered Elf Quest like out of the back of a magazine for Christmas one time, like probably right around issue 14 or 15. I ordered a bunch. I got them as Christmas presents. I shouldn't say I ordered. My parents ordered them.
Right.
I gave them the order info and they got them for me.
Nice.
I have a theory that terrible comics can become high-value collectibles because everyone threw them out. Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah, that would be New Mutants number 98. That's what I believe. Yep.
Let me remove that from stream. Stop
I sent you a pic, but I got Ingve Malmsteen. Ingve's trilogy from like 85 or 86 or something.
I had that on cassette.
Okay. Sorry, I had to throw that out there. Yeah.
This comment just reminded me. I have a theory that terrible comics become high-value collectibles because everyone threw them out. A lot of the worthless 1970s Marvel #1s I got rid of that are now worth something. Nova, Ms. Marvel, all those mediocre Marvel 1971s, that I went, these are worth nothing and I'm never going to read them again, that I got rid of probably in the 90s. Now are, cool old comics to some people and they want them because of the movies.
I'm trying to think what book I saw recently, and there was a bunch of Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man #1, the black cover. And you got to understand there were tons of Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man #1 that came out. I mean, tons of them. I mean, yeah. I think that's in the $1 million club. I mean, million copies sold club. I actually just saw one going for like $12 and $13, and the dealer was still getting another sticker to put on top of it to go up. The black.
Yeah, that's about what they go for. Spawn #1, Spider-Man #1. A lot of times I see people getting $10 to $15 for them online or something. Yeah.
But the era of Marvel that you're talking about, I've always had an ongoing joke that's when cocaine really hit America. Like, I always had a joke that the early 70s, the Swamp Things, the Man Things, things like that. I always made a joke that was the marijuana years. And then when they got to like Miss Marvel and Nova and some of that, I even threw Devil Dinosaur in there a little bit. I was like, that's when cocaine hit, those are awful books, man, but the movies do amazing things. Nova is a horrible book. I still think it's a horrible book, but the idea of it being in a movie made that Nova #1 go up there for a little bit.
Movies have driven. A matter of fact, who was I talking? Oh, I must have been talking about this Wednesday. I don't know if I talked about this on this show or just on an off air. When we were speaking of the non-fungible token stuff that they got now, that certain comic books have value because comic book fans like them.
Mm-hmm.
And certain comic books have value because they're more like derivatives. Their value derives from something else. And I think that's what a lot of these movie books are. Is they're not like a Wolverine, first appearance of Wolverine, Hulk 181, had value long before the movies. Because comic book fans liked Wolverine. But something like that Nova #1, or the first appearance of Captain Marvel, the woman, and you can really see it in the villain books.
Monica Rambeau. Go ahead.
Thanos' first appearance shoots up. Kang they shoot up, but then because I've heard lots of people who speculate on stuff say never trust the villain books. The villain books shoot up when they're announced in the movie. Then once the movie's over, the villain books shoot down in price. Because I think those are like derivatives. Their value is derived solely from their value isn't as a good comic book or a good comic book character that people like. Their value is from all of a sudden a lot of people know about them now because of the movie.
I don't know why people are targeting the villains. I'm wondering if some people have had some bad experiences or something, but there's plenty of videos that were trying to warn people that due to a TV show and the movie, that value on any book, almost any book, is not going to hold. It's going to peak with the movie or peak on the weekend that TV show comes out. And that's what was tracking for a couple years there, But I don't know. But talking about the movies, did anybody go see Shang-Chi? I just found out on Wednesday it came out last weekend. I'm not even interested in the Eternals because it looks like they took the Kirby out of it. You can't have
by the way,
without the Kirby.
I mentioned this on our show a couple of weeks ago. I watched Suicide Squad just so I could watch Tim's rant video on Suicide Squad, how comic book resources said there were plot holes in Suicide. That popped up on my feed, and I went, 40 minutes?
No. I was reading a badly written article about somebody trying to punch holes in it, and none of them stood up. I didn't go on a rant. I mean, maybe at the end I got excited.
I just couldn't believe you made a 40-minute video on some comic book resources article. I'm like, I have to watch the movie now just so I can watch that video.
Hey, I'll have you know, I actually had people say that ended up being very interesting. So I got a little bit intellectual. I got the intellectual crowd. But did you see the part? But the Starro was awesome in the Suicide Squad movie. I became a believer in Starro because of Batman Beyond, of all places. That's when I was like.
And when Saul here says Starro the Conqueror was a joke, he was a joke because they actually had to make him a character in the comics. In the movie, they didn't have to make him a character; they just had to make him a threat. So he was a lot easier to deal with when he's not an actual character. So, I mean, that was the right way to go. I'm not criticizing them for it, but I'm just saying, when it's a lot different than having to make him a character in the comic and having him talk and plan and do stuff as a giant starfish.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, there's a, you've got a Starfinger with the Legion. That's a joke. Starro has potential, I think, but I totally get where the joke stuff comes from. Starro, Amazo, Eclipso. For a while there, you had to have O.
You had to put O in the end of your name, and you're a DC villain. But in the movie, all Starro was a threat. So that his powers are cool. That's why he made a good threat. But it was funny. As soon as you see him have a giant eyeball, you know someone's going to poke him in that eye. That's how this is going to end. So they had.
It was like a tick cartoon, man. That's why it worked. It was like a tick cartoon. We got the destiny of the spear was fulfilled.
I don't mean to spoil this for anyone who hasn't seen Suicide Squad yet, but it doesn't matter. Starro shows up at the end, which is a giant starfish with a giant eye in the middle of him, in the middle of his head. And the whole time, Harley Quinn is running around with a pointy spear the whole movie, not doing anything with it. And you're just, the whole time you're not doing anything with it, I'm going, she's going to poke him in the eye with that. That's how this movie ends.
But it was set up.
It's Chekhov's spear, basically.
And Comic Crack, I'm talking about how I had to watch the Suicide Squad movie just because in my feed popped up a Tim video, a 40-minute Tim video of him talking about how there weren't the plot holes that Comic Book Resources said there was in the movie. And I'm like, he got worked up about this enough to make a 40-minute video?
The whole article, nothing in the article stood up. It just shows like the level of intelligence of people writing for, you can't trust them. I'm like, what movie did you watch?
I just find it funny sometimes what gets people, because we all get worked up about stuff. And what gets people worked up is always kind of amusing because it's like
it was an intellectual challenge.
Like some random article on CBR got Tim all worked up. He was just like, I gotta put a video out on this.
No, I'll tell you what article got me worked up, and I did not do a video because there's no way to do it. But Bleeding Cool News did an article on they're reprinting another trade of Weapon X by Barry Windsor Smith. And you know how I feel about Barry. So I'm like, oh, cool. I click on it, and the dude is complaining about where he gets on there, and it's not even it's the stupidest thing. The Jude Terror, I think, is the one that wrote the article. He's talking about, well, they started with Wolverine, and more people worry about where he's putting what and who, talking about Cyclops and all this stuff. And I'm really like, it was filth. It was pure filth. I mean, I'm not using the words because I don't want YouTube to come on me. And then in the very last line, they're like, oh, yeah, and here's the Windsor Smith trade coming out. I'm like, that is garbage. He was talking about Wolverine's penis and who he's sticking it in. And is it called this when it's in Cyclops, or is it called this when it's, and he was mad about it. And then he said they kicked off Hickman. We don't get to finish that story or something. And I'm sitting there like at work raging, like, talk about Barry Windsor Smith. I'm like, not Wolverine's penis.
So we got someone here to Feher 27 has a Best Starro appearance. I didn't know there was such a thing. Tony Bedard's Rebels comic. I don't think I ever read that one. Was that a Legion one?
Yeah, what happened is that Legion, the book from that started in '89 out of Invasion, ended around issue 70, and I want to say it was 0 Hour. They turned into Rebels because Verl Dox, Brainiac, let's put it that way, the green guy, he had a son who took over the Legion police force and went after him. And I haven't read any of the Rebels because I'm not done reading that that line of comics. But now that I know Starro is in there, I'm down. I want those issues now. Grant Morrison and his Justice League did a great version of Starro. I mean, there's a great Starro story with Justice League Europe that Keith Giffen did. That was fantastic. But, I mean, there's some dumb ones out there. Don't get me wrong,
And every time I see Tony Bedard's name mentioned, I have to mention CrossGen's Negation by Tony Bedard and Paul Pelletier. That's just one of my favorites.
Tony Bedard is really underrated. I mean, he really is. So is
Paul Pelletier. I never hear his name mentioned anywhere ever, and he's been doing work for Marvel now for years. He's just a really good, solid artist.
Yeah,
he's like
is he a writer or an artist? I thought he was a writer.
He's an artist, Paul Pelletier. He's like he's like, I don't know, the Sal Buscema of the 21st century. In terms of, he does a lot of good solid superhero work. I really like his stuff, but he doesn't get mentioned up in there with any. He's.
I always thought of him as who you get when you can't get Tom Grummett.
Who am I thinking of? Who's the guy that was writing another Batman book when Morrison was on it? Wasn't did Tony? No, Tony Bedard was doing the art on a Batman book, I think.
No, Tony Bedard's a writer. You're thinking Tony S. Daniels?
Okay, I don't know. I'll figure it out later. I gotta get off here. I just got a few more minutes, man. I gotta get back to this paperwork and get everything done for Monday.
Well, you're being cheered on here,
brother.
Tim.
Huh?
Didn't Paul Pelletier have a brother?
I don't know. Who's an artist?
Or is the brother?
I've never played DC Universe Online. Lots of Starro collectibles in the game for collectors who like it, in-game assets. Interesting. No, I've never played any of those Marvel or DC Online games.
So do you get one piece of Starro and then you can grow 5 other Starros from it?
Your Starros are unlimited.
I think I'm thinking Tom Peyer, Peyer. Yeah, I'm thinking Tom Peyer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a whole box of the Legion stuff here. That's the last issue. This room, I've also been packing. So I mean, this room is a disaster. I've got a lot of stuff packed. Yeah.
Wow. That's right. He moved. Let's do another rip, read, and tear before Tim leaves. Let's see here. This is a 10th anniversary Marvel #1s. Let me get it.
With the box covers.
Yep.
Can you get that comment off the screen where I'm on my phone? It's really taking over. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Didn't know it was still up. There we go. We have the Cat #1. We got the Power of Warlock #1. We've got Doctor Strange back in his solo series by Frank Brunner. So I think the Cat might be the only true first appearance #1, or was she?
I thought her first appearance was in Avengers as Hellcat, but I don't know.
No, she came back. This is the original Cat who that Hellcat found her suit.
Yeah, the cat eventually becomes Tigra.
Yeah, wasn't Patsy Walker like a Millie the Model kind of character in the 60s?
She was.
In the Hellcat? Yeah, there we go.
No, yeah. Patsy Walker started in 1945.
Nice.
Really?
Nice.
So Millie the Model was a Patsy Walker.
Yeah, they both started in 45. Patsy Walker started first.
I love when Paolo comes right in there, man, like right there. You know what I mean?
And there were a bunch of similar comics like that in the 1940s. There was also Tessie the Typist and Nellie the Nurse. What was the other one?
Did Stan Lee name them all?
He might have.
That alliteration.
But he wasn't writing all of them. He was
alliteration though.
Well, I'll jump in there. I'm slabbing the Doctor Strange. I'm reading.
That's a great Frank Brunner cover.
Yeah, I mean that's what's getting me there, man. And then Warlock, I'm reading it.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, man, but Hellcat can just be. I'll throw it to a Mad Dog and let it just get ripped up there. I think her husband was. I think was actually Mad Dog. Seriously, in the comics.
Wow. Is that Cat?
Patsy Walker's boyfriend, Buzz Baxter. He also, I think he appears in the second. He doesn't. I think he doesn't appear in the first Patsy Walker story, which still debuts in Miss Marvel, in the Miss America magazine. But by the second book, I think he's there, and then he stays her boyfriend until they have the Career Girls, when the two Patsy Walker comics morph into Career Girls, because Buzz goes off to Vietnam War and comes back shell shocked, and that's why it's kind of nutty when they get integrated into the Marvel universe.
Was that Cat reprinted in the Superhero Women?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the Cat, Night Nurse. I think it's a Cat, Night Nurse, and Shauna the She-Devil.
I will tell you, I don't think Hellcat got a fair shake. She should have stayed in the Avengers longer. You know,
Is she still around?
Yeah, they always try to bring her back.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Scott?
The last time it was, I don't think it was very good because they tried to make it jokey.
What are you doing with these, Scott? What do you got?
I'm going to read Doctor Strange. And the other two, I have no strong opinions either way. The only difference I can see between the two, and this is sad, is I would slab Warlock because it has a better logo than the cat does.
Got to base it on something. That's what. But a lot of times when I pick my slabs in this game, sometimes you pick them for value. Sometimes I pick them just because I like the cover and I want a displayed kind of thing. You know, at least you can display a slab.
I know very little about either Warlock or the cat, and
the cat
toss up for between those two.
The cat only becomes interesting. Yeah, the cat only becomes interesting when she becomes Tigra. Even though I think there's one of those lesser branches of Hydra appearing in the cat comic in issues 3 and 4, I think.
Did Linda Fight write this cat story?
Yeah.
Was this the one that she eventually became Herb Trimpe's wife? But I think they had they had her write some stuff at Marvel like in the early 70s because they wanted some female books and female writers. I think she was one of them.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it's the Halloween or all the things I've seen, but, you know, turning the lady into a cat is a little bit of a cat. Any kind of cat character is a bit of a trope. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like.
Oh, it is now. It is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's for sure.
Who did
That's
the
because.
artwork?
Who did the artwork on it? Oh, I don't remember.
I was going to ask who did the artwork on the Warlock cover.
The Warlock, that may be Gil Kane.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's Gil Kane. And look at the face in the back.
Kane, although I don't remember if it's still Kane doing the art for Warlock #1, because he did the art for his previous 2 appearances in Marvel Premiere.
Yeah, he did Warlock #1.
Some of my first memories of X-Men, not X-Men, of Marvel when I was a kid was Gil Kane with Roy Thomas when they were doing Captain Marvel. Doing the whole thing where he'd hit the neck bands instead of saying Shazam, and he'd go from Rick Jones to, you know, Captain Marvel for a little bit. And then there were some Warlock books around there, and the Warlock books really freaked me out when I was like 5 or 6, which I regret now, you know.
That's the Warlock. I think Roy Thomas writes it. Is that him? But it was the Warlock as Jesus on Counter.
Yeah. Because Roy Thomas wits and Jerry Conway keeps going. The whole Jesus storyline, the thing that got pretty obvious, who they wanted the bad guy to be, because they named the politician Rex Carpenter. And guys, seriously,
oh God,
so fucking obvious.
I never caught that until you said that. Until I heard it out loud. You know what I mean? Reading it, I just glanced over it, but now. Yeah. I was thinking the Carpenters were a big band when this was going on. You know?
No, it is because it's the idea that it's the Antichrist was going to be more appealing than Jesus' second coming. So and he will pretend to be the Christ, so he'll take on the name, thus the Rex Carpenter.
Counter Earth.
Slab and the cat #1. Reading Marvel Premiere and ripping Warlock.
Ripping Warlock?
Think I'm ripping Warlock.
Nah.
You softy.
I'm slapping Doctor Strange reading Warlock and ripping the cat.
My problem with Son of Satan is that he's supposed to have been a villain the whole time. So when Marvel turned him into a bad guy years ago, I got a video somewhere where I'm like, surprise, the Son of Satan's a bad guy. I thought they finally got him off.
What a shocking heel turn.
Man. Well, guys, it was great seeing you, but I'm out. It's almost 8 o'clock here. I'm going to get back on these papers and maybe eat a PB&J. I don't know, man. I've been procrastinating doing this, but, you know, God, we want the house, you know, so. Yeah. But good seeing everybody. So.
Okay. Stop by anytime, of course. You know, next week, if you got just a few minutes, stop by and say hello.
Congratulations on the job, Paolo.
Thanks. It's been busy.
All right. Later, man.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye. Good to see Tim.
Yeah. Glad he had a few minutes because
Yeah.
But it was a good story though.
Yeah. Paul Dini was doing Heart of Hush and Detective while Morrison was doing Batman. Okay. Maybe that's what the writer Tim was searching for in his mind before. Yeah, good story. Getting some guy his comics out of the boiler room. That's no good for your comics.
No.
Let's see what else has been. We got some Khazar, Lord of the Savage Land, and an artist who's doing this airbrush-looking stuff that's sort of Richard Corbin-ish. I don't know who that is, but that sort of reminds me of it. But it's probably computer, of course.
I really can't think of anybody that reminds me of Corbin.
No, that's the closest I've seen to anybody reminding me of Corbin, and it's not that close.
And Corbin's kind of his own thing.
I like that I like when they reprint the covers big, even if it's something I'm not that interested in. It's always fun to see. Phoenix Song Echo. To me, the Phoenix died in X-Men 137 and never came back. Marvel Girl never came back. Phoenix never came back. There's no such thing as a Phoenix Force. I'm back. So all the Van Halen records you got, Tim. Yep, you just missed them. Corbin did stand alone, that's for sure. He definitely had his own unique thing.
The closest style to Corbin's might be an Italian alternative artist called Tanino Liberatore. He co-created
the Rancerox guy. Yeah, I can see how that might.
He never reminded me of Corbin.
I've always liked this supervillain team up cover, the John Byrne one with all the heroes bowing down to doom.
Mm-hmm. That is that.
What is that? It's like supervillain team up 13 or 12 or something. But it looks like they're putting out a Book of Doom omnibus with a whole bunch of his appearances.
I think even in the 70s, Byrne was showing how good he was on covers, and it took him a while to get Marvel on board with letting him do covers, because after he takes over regular duties on X-Men, Cockrum is still doing covers for quite a while.
He was. Cockrum's covers were nice too.
They were, but it's Byrne, and you expect Byrne covers.
But Byrne can do a really nice cover himself.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I don't dislike Cockrum's covers, but that Byrne's in there, so let Byrne do the covers.
Byrne reminds me of his career reminds me of Eric Clapton, and in fact, you used to hear a lot about him back in the 70s, 80s, whatnot. But now you only really hear about him if he says something really stupid.
and he's still been making comics ever since then, but you don't really hear about him. I just, speaking of saying something too, I just heard the I think it's the Immortal Hulk artist just got Marvel just parted ways with him.
Yeah.
As did the writer of Immortal Hulk. I guess he said too many dumb things over the years, and they're finally like, all right, we've had it with this guy.
Evidently, he had some anti-Semitic,
which is
pretty blatant references in the artwork. So.
Which is funny because nobody in Brazil knows what a Jew is.
Well, he had some anti-gay stuff in another one too, and anti-this stuff and anti-that. They finally and he's been working at Marvel for 30 years or something. He was working in the 90s.
Yeah. Well, that's easy to be in Brazil.
Yeah.
Anti-gay. But I don't believe it's anti-Semitic. No, nobody cares about Jews in Brazil.
Sometimes you just get caught. It's like you don't even know any Jews. Like you said, you don't even know any Jews in Brazil. You just get taught to hate.
There are plenty of Jews in Brazil, but nobody thinks about them. They're not important. I think people are more pissed off that there are Native Americans in Brazil than there are Jews.
I'm about to finish reading the Ditko Spider-Man run for the first time. Are you enjoying it? Because I actually want to read that again. So I haven't read it in years and years. But my reading of that was, like I said, I consider myself having started collecting comics when I was about 9. I had comics before then, but when I was 9, I realized they all went in order and made one big story. And that's when I also got into the history of comics. I'd read anything I could. Like I got those Fireside origin books from Marvel, and I loved reading the Stan Lee intros just to get a little look behind stuff. You know, I took like the Steranko History of Comics out of the library, and I started collecting Spider-Man right around issue 160. I remember the first issue of Spider-Man I bought with my own money was 157, which is a great Romita cover with Dr. Octopus in a helicopter kicking Spider-Man out of the helicopter. And I think I started buying it regularly like a few issues later with like 162. I think it was like a Stegron the Lizard story. And so I read some Spider-Man as a kid, and he was just another superhero to me. And I would always, like, whenever I was reading like history of comic stuff, people loved Spider-Man. He was special to them. But I was reading him, and he wasn't special to me only because by, the mid to late 70s, Spider-Man was just another superhero.
That's one of the things that I always liked about Fred Hembeck's articles.
Oh, yes, I read Fred Hembeck, too.
I mean, granted, he was more word balloons than even Roy Thomas did.
Oh, yeah.
But he got so enthusiastic about these characters that that he loved. He just couldn't help but,
kind of Bah Hembeck magazine. I loved that.
Yeah. And did you also notice that anytime that Stan Lee did an intro for any of those books, whatever book he was talking about at the time, that was always his favorite character?
I learned through reading those intros over and over again that Stan Lee was lying to me.
Well, yeah.
There's so many because I read him like, a CIA agent reading his briefs. But anyway, I found they put the Ditko stuff out in the pocket books, the small version of it, when I was 10 or so. And I finally got to read the Ditko stuff, and I was like, now I know why people think Spider-Man's special. I got it when I read the Ditko stuff. I was like, this because it set everything, and it was so different from the Ditko Spider-Man is set apart even from the Spider-Man I was reading in the 70s for sure. It was just so different and so fresh to me. So he wasn't like every superhero. So that's when I first read that Ditko run, and really, or at least I read the first 20 issues I think they covered in those books. But most Marvel Silver Age books are fairly readable.
Yeah.
I saw Stan Lee always put written and edited by him. I'm thinking you had to edit Ditko? Yeah. You didn't have to, probably. Like I said, I learned Stan Lee was the one who taught me that adults will lie to me if it's in their interest. Because I didn't, as a kid, as a 10, 12-year-old kid, I didn't really have adults lying to me.
That you knew of at the time. Yeah.
What was that?
I said that you knew of at the time.
Right. I mean, I imagine if you knew people who were, alcoholics and drug addicts as a kid, you'd pick up that they were lying to you. But I wasn't around any of that. But reading those Stan Lee things, I sure eventually figured, yeah, those Ditko is still fresh, especially those Spider-Mans. I find them very fresh. Though I haven't read them. A matter of fact, I bought the Ditko Omnibus that I kept meaning to read.
No.
Never read it, and like 5 years later sold it. I'll buy it again someday or take it out of the library. But I was just like, this thing has been sitting around for at least 5 years, and I still haven't read it again. So I had plenty of other stuff to read.
About 15 feet away from me right now, there are 3 giant stacks of books on the table there that I've had for 5 to 10 years, and most of them I still haven't read yet.
Textbook, regular books or comic books?
Comics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because somehow I can forgive myself for not reading books that are because they take a lot longer to read than comic books. So I can go,
Usually.
I've been sitting on the shelf for years, but that's okay. But for somehow I'm like, I haven't read, and occasionally I'll find something on the shelf. Like, I think I now have I don't get that many collected editions anymore, except for my birthdays and Christmas. I take stuff out of the library these days. So, but now I have one section of my shelf dedicated to stuff I got for my birthdays that after I read, I'll put away. So I know, because there was one Daniel Klaus book, I forget which one, that I discovered this year that I never read. And I'm a big Daniel Klaus fan, and I have a Daniel Klaus section in my library. And I wanted to read a Daniel Klaus book, so I went over to see which one I wanted to read, and I'm like, what's that one? And sure enough, I put it there and completely forgot it existed.
I think it's also kind of fun going through like a stack of comics, like I was mentioning, I haven't read yet, and just discovering you don't even remember buying.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this is cool. Where did this come from? This is Christmas all over again.
That reminded me, last weekend I watched the Daniel Klaus movie, Wilson, based on his graphic novel with Woody Harrelson. I enjoyed it.
Didn't even know that was a thing.
Neither did I. Someone mentioned it here a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. I think I may have mentioned Daniel Klaus or Wilson or something. And someone said, do you know that's a movie? It came out like 2017. Klaus actually wrote the screenplay for it. It got mixed reviews, but I enjoyed it.
Didn't know anything about it.
Reading the Spider-Man now makes me want to read Ditko Doctor Strange. Let me show you my favorite printing of Ditko Doctor Strange.
Don't think I've actually not read a whole lot of Doctor Strange. A bit, but not much.
This is not all of the Ditko Doctor Strange, but it's this is the Fireside book. It's only a slim one that came out in the 70s. Another one of those where I read the Stan Lee introduction really closely.
That font on the front cover just screams 1970s.
Yeah.
There are a few holes in Doctor Strange that I haven't read, because the Brazilian publisher went from the Marv Wolfman stuff directly to the Roger Stern stuff, and they went over the things written by Chris Claremont, which is probably not a bad idea. But the Roger Stern material hasn't been collected yet because of it. Because they're not publishing
their stuff.
It's the printing on this I like so much. Mm-hmm. The printing on this is nice and clean and clear. And it's still that old school printing where sometimes you can see dots because it's not that tight a line screen, but it's just so nice. And the pages are still bright. I got this in, when is this? 1979 or something? 1979. And the pages are still bright and white, and the colors are still bright. And this is like the good version of a newsprint comic to me, because I am not. Because people wax nostalgic about newsprint comics, but when newsprint comics were new, they weren't yellow. I hate old yellowed newsprint comic, but some people love that aesthetic. I love the old newsprint. I want my old newsprint to be bright and white like this is. And like I said, this is just my favorite version, and it's not glossy like today's paper is. So I think it really shows off the Ditko art very nicely. It's like I said, after all these years, it's my favorite Ditko version of printed version of Doctor Strange. So if you can ever find that one, it's nice to have. I guess Terrence is reading Ditko Doctor Strange, picking up Strange Tales issues slowly, and they're good reads. Yeah, that's a nice collected edition. It's a good one. I always wanted to get DC War Book, which has a DC War book has a fireside book. I didn't know that. I got the collected items classic singles can be found fairly cheap. Early reprints on new. Yeah, I always wanted to kind of get those.
Yeah, the older I get, the more of appreciation I have for the DC War books.
Yeah, what did I got a few years ago the Sam Glasman one. That was really good.
Is that just the generic book on his whole career, or is it one of the ones?
No, it's. I never knew this. I'll have to pull it off my shelf.
He did a lot of books that were based on his service when he was in the Navy.
That's the stuff. It was all the stuff that was based on his service. That ran in like 3, 4, or 8 page stories in the DC War book.
Steve Bissett was really promoting that book pretty heavily.
It was good. I did not realize how good. I mean, just Let me pull it off the shelf. Hold on. I think it's right.
I wondered if Shelton had Sam Glasman at HeroesCon a few years ago. I can't remember.
I don't think I've ever seen I've never read a Glansman story. Pretty sure of it.
It's the USS Stevens. That's the name of the stories, and it's that thick.
Oh wow, that's a sizable tome.
He did that many USS, and then at the end, I didn't realize. What's interesting about this book too is I don't know. They got permission from Marvel and DC to publish this stuff because this is they go with this is all his DC short stuff, and it's just really good. It's true life stories of the U.S. Stevens, and then he continued it in Epic Comics or something like that.
There's an Epic graphic novel.
Yeah. And there was a series and a graphic novel. Oh, tells what they all are. Tells where they all came from. The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Where are the last ones? What are they? But this is really good. I would. Joe Kubert Presents in 2012. He was still doing these stories. I didn't know there was such a thing. Joe Kubert's Presents 1 through 6. He did stories in.
I think those are the ones that had colored.
Right. A Sailor's Story, I think, is the graphic novel. He had stuff in Savage Tales Volume 2 in 1986, which is from Marvel.
You might have one or two stories in there. Yeah, I remember that John Severin did a couple of. John Severin did a Western story and a war story in there. Then there were a couple of. There were a couple of attempts at doing ongoing features.
Going back to something we were talking about.
Sam Glasman.
Severin is the other artist I can think of that reminds me a little bit of Corbin, just because both of them have a kind of like a 3D aspect to their figures.
Yeah, but also this really holds together as a narrative too. I mean, each story is its own individual thing, but you really get caught up in the ship and the sailors and the relationship with the ship and them trying to survive. I was surprised at because I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this because DC war stories are pretty solid generally, but they're not great. This altogether was great. I mean, it was just a terrific thing. Sam Glasman, USS Stevens, the collected, and it's funny how you could not, I've been collecting comics for ages. I barely knew who Sam Glasman was, let alone that he did all those USS Stevens stories. So it's like, comics are so big, it's easy for stuff to slip by us.
He did more of a science fiction story about a submarine after that too. I can't remember the title of it.
Western and War are both very good at DC. See, I don't even know if they're good as much as they're solid. Like you could always. I mean, it depends. I mean, you could call them good. I've got no problem with that. But it's like they were never the stories I wanted to read because they were always kind of predictable to me. But they were also not bad. They were kind of good. And there were some exceptional ones, but a lot of times they were just like there. But they always had solid art, solid writing, and could tell a story.
And as a kid, you couldn't put a gun to my head and make me watch a Western.
I grew up,
but as a little kid,
I grew up watching westerns with my dad, so I like westerns.
Gotcha.
Yeah, old westerns were still they still showed a lot of them on TV, even in the 80s here. Not the TV series. I sometimes hear people talking about Maverick or
I didn't watch any of those.
yeah, but I've never seen any. The only one that was shown here, in the classic one that was shown here in the 80s, was Bonanza. But the rest of the TV series, not really. But the movies were always on. I still saw a lot of Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne.
Yeah,
And even on TV. But Spencer and Terence Hill, they showed everything, man. Both the westerns.
Yeah,
and
I didn't see any of the TV shows either.
Spencer and Terence Hill are funny.
Oh yeah, they're amazing.
Oh, God, there's this one. I don't remember the title of the movie. There's one sequence in one of the movies where he's daring somebody else to take his guns out of his holsters, and he's just so fast that the other guy can't do it. It's a hysterical scene.
Yeah. Yeah, they always, the westerns and war books always had good artists.
Mm.
You're right in
the thing. There was a time when I remember I hadn't seen Bud Spencer and Terence Hill on TV for years, and I thought, man, it's really sad. There's a new generation of kids who are going to grow up without ever having seen a proper Bud Spencer Terence Hill breakout fight.
Huh.
And the choreograph. Even if you just watch the choreographs, they're amazing, because Terence Hill was a gymnast and a swimmer, and a competitive swimmer, and he was very, very agile, and he could do amazing stuff like he was on a circus.
Yeah, there's another one that takes place. It's actually inside a gym where they're being attacked by a bunch of goons, and they're using parallel bars and punching bags and stuff. That's another very good scene.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen Have Gun Will Travel. Only saw westerns at a second-run art house theaters in college. There's an interesting way to see westerns.
One of the cool things in college was neat was a friend of mine had an honors film course, and even if you weren't taking the course, you could still go in and watch the movies along with the students that were taking it. I got to see some really good movies that way.
I used to collect the Marvel westerns in the 70s. They call me Trinity. My name is Nobody. Great stuff. That's where, like in the Marvel westerns, that's where I discovered, who was it? Jack Keller, Joe Maneely.
Yeah.
It's like the reprints is where I saw them. So I used to always love, because by the late 70s, I mean, I don't think I ever bought any Marvel westerns off the stands. They were almost all gone by the late 70s. But I occasionally, from the kid comic book network around the neighborhood, I would be able to buy some old westerns, and I always liked getting them. They were fun stuff, even if no one ever actually got shot. They all got the guns shot out of their hands.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw any artwork from Mobius's Blueberry, and I was like, "Whoa, this is different."
Yeah. The Italian comics too, the Italian westerns, and they have a bunch of them.
Yeah, I didn't know any of those as a kid. Much later in life.
Yeah, because it's really hard to find Italian comics outside Italy, especially. And even if you can find some French stuff in English-speaking countries, the Italian stuff just doesn't get there. Not only Tex, the Great Black was a famous series in the 50s. More recently, Jaguar, although that's a little bit more with mysticism than with gunfighting. And of course, Tex, the longest running Italian comic.
Yeah, Russ Heath did some Kid Cult. Mm-hmm. Read a lot of Jonah Hex. I never was that taken by Jonah Hex. He was okay.
I just never read much of it.
Yeah, you know what always bothered me about Jonah Hex? Mm-hmm. That flap of skin that went from lip to lip that they constantly called a scar. And I'd be like, that's not a scar. A scar doesn't grow over your. And it's just, I don't know why that always distracted me. Them calling that a scar and me going, that's not a scar. That's not what a scar is. I may be only 10, but I know what a scar is. That's not it. There was a good Western comic. In the early 2000s by Image. Desperados.
Oh yeah, I got the trades.
Mm-hmm.
Who did that?
Jeff
John
Mariotti.
Cassidy? Jeff
John
Mariotti.
Cassidy art and Jeff Mariotti wrote.
Ah, okay. That was good stuff. The Jimmy Palmiotti, Justin Gray, Jonah Hex series is fantastic. I liked some. I bought some of that. That was one I wouldn't say it was fantastic, but I enjoyed it. It was kind of artist dependent too, but they always got good artists on it.
Didn't Darwin Cook do it?
I gotta go back. Yeah, Darwin Cook did some. Who was that? Was he the Italian artist? I can't remember who the guy that Jorge. I can't remember his name.
Diaz? Was it the Jorge Diaz?
I can't remember. He was like a famous European artist that they got to do some Jonah Hex, and I just remember them being so thrilled about it on social media.
Then I don't remember.
I can't remember either, but he was good. Hex was Robert E. Howard. Okay,
maybe.
Sleepy Reader, did you read the sci-fi Jonah Hex? I'm just curious. Wasn't he briefly? They turned him into a sci-fi character in the early '80s.
Yeah, they dumped him into the future and had him riding a motorcycle.
And then he returned later as.
Mad Max was popular back then.
Yeah. Mad Max, Jonah Hex.
I've seen enough Mad Max to last me the rest of my life already.
He bought some Hex, the sci-fi. Yeah, it was just called Hex, I think, too. It wasn't even they didn't even call him Jonah Hex anymore because got to get that supernatural tie-in with your sci-fi story.
They don't know what to do.
Let's see what else is in Comic Shop news. Anything that catches my eye? They're looks like they're doing an epic collection of some of the Sienkiewicz stuff. What volume is this?
New Mutants?
Moon Knight Epic Collection, Shadows of the Moon, collecting Moon Knight 1980s 5 through 23. So that's prime Sienkiewicz moving out of his Neil Adams phase art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's some good stuff. I thought
that had already been reprinted, but I guess not. Well, it's good that they're putting it out.
Maybe not in an epic collection.
Well, that's the cheapest way of getting all of that Moon Knight, because then they'll probably have the third volume will feature the rest of the series with stuff written by Stephen Grant. Not very good, but whatever.
And I wonder how this Marvel Star Wars stuff is selling. I never hear it mentioned.
Yeah, well, they always.
When they first launched it was selling really, really, really well.
Yeah, but when issue 1 came out, and maybe the first year, everybody on YouTube was buying it. Issue 1, everybody on YouTube bought. I hardly ever hear it mentioned, except for certain key issue collectors buy certain key issues.
Right.
Yeah, because it's announced that there's going to be a first appearance.
Right.
So they're all going for the rare first appearance.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with both Star Trek and Star Wars comics is there's been so many of them over the years. It just gets hard to keep up with all of them.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the Stranger Things TV show, but I have no interest in a Stranger Things comic book.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, I wonder who's buying. I wonder if non-comic book fans buy stuff like that.
Possibly. They're even publishing it here in Portugal. And the funny thing, they're coming out in European format.
But it's like, would you buy a Stranger Things comic?
No.
I mean, I like the series. I watched, all 3 series of them, enjoyed myself thoroughly. But I was like, a comic of Stranger Things? Why would I?
Even the TV series that I'm a fan of, I probably wouldn't buy comics of them.
No. The only TV series I bought some comic books of recently, and by recently I mean 15 years ago, was Firefly. I really enjoyed the TV show. I liked the movie.
I never read any of the comics.
I bought some comics. They were okay. There's no.
Although I am interested in reading the Prisoner comics.
That I have those. I read the Prisoner comic before I ever saw the Prisoner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never seen the Prisoner.
Are you talking about the ones that were done by Kirby, or are you talking about the ones that were done by Mark Asquith?
Both.
Okay.
Dean Motter, I think, did the DC ones.
Mark Asquith did, yeah.
Okay, because I didn't watch The Prisoner probably until the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And
I never saw the original series. I never saw the original series. I saw an episode of the remake with Ian McKellen as number 2. I can't remember who played number 6.
I don't know.
And so having never seen The Prisoner, I bought the DC series when it came out in the late 80s. I was kind of confused, but I like Dean Motter stuff, so I enjoyed it. And then I watched The Prisoner, finally saw The Prisoner in the early 2000s and liked it, and went back and read the Dean Motter series and went, this makes a lot more
sense, didn't it?
But that just reminded me, it was just a couple of years ago from Titan Comics, I got a Prisoner comic miniseries, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
I remember it was one of those where it was once again like this week. It was a slow week when I only had 2 comics, because usually I once heard someone describe licensed comics and things in general as it's when you really, really like something in one form so much that you buy it in another form that is guaranteed to let you down, because it's not the thing. It's not really the thing you love. It's like some secondary thing based on the thing you love. And that's kind of what it always is. But like I said, it was a slow week, and I think I flipped through and liked the art in that Prisoner. And I was like, you know what? I'll pick up an issue of this just to give it a try. I know it's like a 4-issue mini, but it was good stuff. I think it was from Titan Comics, The Prisoner. Yeah. And it was just kind of...
You're just talking about, form, like it one form, not another one. I saw some art from some James Bond comics that are coming out in the future. I thought they actually looked really good.
I digitally borrowed it from the library, read the Warren Ellis James Bond, and I'm doing the artist a disservice because I can't remember his name, and the book is called the Warren Ellis James Bond, but the artist did the whole thing too, and is top notch.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really good. I enjoyed that. I must say that was probably the second best James Bond thing I've read besides the Ian Fleming novels. I liked it better than the movie. I'm not even a James Bond movie fan. I like the original Ian Fleming novels. But it was one of those things that was good enough where I'd buy it. I'd like to have the Warren Ellis omnibus. I wish like I said, the artist was top notch. He did a great job. I wish I could remember his name and do him justice, because he's as much of the show as Warren Ellis. That's for sure.
I just remember looking at this and I was kind of impressed. As like not something I would have thought twice about. But I looked at it, I was like, this looks interesting.
Yeah. I even went back and read like a Felix Leiter trade. I forget who did that, but that was solid too. That was well done. I don't think Warren Ellis wrote that one. But they had good art and good writing on it too.
Right.
So that was good stuff. Oh, what's this other thing? The Savage Avengers. That's the Avengers with Conan, right?
Don't get
Yeah.
Jesus.
Man, I just don't know anything that's going on in Marvel. Just nothing. Everybody's in space now too. Sword, everything.
Yeah. And it's now part of a crossover with the Guardians of the Galaxy out in space, and Cable showed up as well.
You know what? I saw Jeff Lemire Maze book in the shop this week, issue 1, I think it was. And I flipped through it and went, I just don't have enough faith. The only thing I've read end to end from his is Royal City, and it was okay. by the end, it wasn't the same book as the beginning, and I was just kind of like, eh. So I was like, I don't. So I looked at that Jeff Lemire book, and I was like, didn't get it. Huh.
I'm pretty sure I don't think I've ever read anything he's ever done.
We were all groaning about Marvel. That was cute. This Defender's cover is very Ditko-esque. Not with the logo in the middle. The logo in the middle doesn't bother me as much there because it's part of the image. But we've got these guys in the background who are very Steve Ditko-esque.
I hate the way they broke up the. Well, I mean, you have to make it fit that triangle pattern, but when they break up like that drives me nuts.
Yeah, that doesn't. At least they got creative with it here. That's why. I mean, it's not my favorite cover, but at least they got creative. So I'll give them points. Oh, look, it's a Captain America and Iron Man book. Our two movie stars together. And I have no interest in non-Jack Kirby Eternals.
Nobody has.
Ever. It's like nobody has ever cared. As a matter of fact, let's do, before we end, let me see if I can find this 1985 Marvel. Where is that? There we go. One more read, rip, and slab just because I have an Eternals in here.
The Peter B. Gillis. Although I am intrigued by the Peter B. Gillis story because I actually like Peter B. Gillis and is not very famous and deserves to be better known. But I remember his Defenders was great.
There we go. Here is our not very valuable 1985 Marvel first issues. None of them real first appearances. Cloak and Dagger #1.
I have two of those.
I don't have any. I don't know if I may have used to have that because I think that's the Cloak and Dagger ongoing first issue, not the Cloak and Dagger mini.
Yeah, it is.
So none of these are real first issues, but they're all first issues.
Yeah, that's volume 2 of the Eternals. The Moon Knight mini series that's in between the two ongoing titles. That's Fist of Khonshu, and Cloak and Dagger ongoing. Okay, I'll slab Eternals, read Cloak and Dagger, rip Moon Knight.
Wow, you're gonna slab Eternals?
I think I agree with Paolo.
Wow, is that a Simonson cover on Eternals?
It is. Simonson did the covers.
Oh wow. Okay, I can see slab and Simonson cover.
He didn't do the interior art, but he did the covers.
Right. Oof. And you agree with Paolo?
I think so on this one.
Yeah, and Cloak and Dagger actually had some potential in the storyline that they were trying to run. The Brazilian publisher only published the first 2 issues. Then Brazil hit hyperinflation, and the publisher had to reduce the number of pages in their superhero books from 80 to 64. So Cloak and Dagger was one of the series that got dropped. But there was not much interest in following up Moon Knight after Sienkiewicz left. Yeah. And I kind of agree. I mean, that's when they made the costume complicated with all the gold bits.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with Sleepy. I'm going to slab Moon Knight just because I kind of like that cover. I'm going to read Cloak and Dagger because I think I've read that issue and I remember it being mediocre. But I remember it being a little better than that Eternals, which I don't really remember either of them. So if I were to read either of them right now, it would probably be just like the first time. Matter of fact, I think I've read all of these 3, but I don't even remember them. I have zero memory of the content of any of them. But I think I'll read Cloak and Dagger, slab Moon Knight, and rip the Eternals. Because it's not Jack Kirby Eternals.
To answer Damien's question, said, would any of you guys slab a comic in real life? Only if it's something I find in somebody's attic that's going to make me a lot of money.
Only for a lark. It'll probably be something stupid like the first issue of Royal Roy.
I would,
or the second issue of Royal Roy.
so you can have the highest graded Royal Roy #2 out there.
Exactly. Nobody else will have it.
You're going to slab Street Poet Ray.
Yes, I am. And I'm going to put all the comics in one slab.
Like Scott said, if I suddenly got something, found something in somebody's attic, that's a given. But I doubt that. That's like saying if I win the lottery. I think I would be more likely to slab something as a lark than slab it for real.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wish they slabbed Treasury editions, only because I've showed this before. I have the Mighty Avengers Treasury edition with electrical tape from the 1970s on the spine. And they made some good electrical tape in the 1970s because this stuff ain't coming off. I want to know what CGC will grade electrical tape at. 1970s electrical tape. I mean, but it would be a lark. I think I'd be more likely to slab something as a lark. Because
the book's a 3.2, but the tape's like a 7.0.
Yeah, that's some tape. But every now and then, I go onto eBay and I say to myself, you know what? I really should have a slab. Daisy's not slabbing anything. Royal Roy.
Actually, it would be interesting for the lark. Get one of those ridiculous comics that nobody reads that has an actual first appearance of some side character.
I do have empty slab.
And then advertise everywhere that you have that comic, and see if it gets the speculators interested.
So you're getting the kayfabe effect.
I don't think so, because ETA Nick just did a video on slabbed comics that don't even make their money back on eBay. Slabbed comics that go from between $25 and $40. Yeah. And some of them were like random comics that were like highest known, highest value. But it's like some issues that nobody cares about one way or the other. So it's like Royal Roy #2. But probably less interesting than Royal Roy #2. But again, Mike put up. Yeah, I sometimes I'm like, I should slab one of my own comics. I see them all the time on eBay. Yeah, sometimes I go into eBay and I say to myself, I should just get a slabbed comic for $25 to $40 just to have a slabbed comic in my collection. But then as I'm looking at them, I'm like, I don't want to spend $25 to $40 on this $2 comic. Yep. And that's why I always end up not buying them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're going to do it for a lark, put it where it's funny, which is sending the comic to be submitted. Yeah. Not buying it off of eBay.
Right. I could get some of my favorite comics that are goofy back there. Max of the Regulators #1, one of my favorite all-time black and white boom goofy comics.
Slab the Sleaze Brothers #1.
Yeah. I'd be better off doing that, but then I have to do it. I wonder if my comics
or Savage Henry, but Matt Howarth.
Slab a random Usagi Yojimbo cover that I like, something that'll actually do me some good. That I'll slab. I don't know if you saw my comic book haul this week. Waiting for 4. I've seen Comic Crack has gotten into this since he was selling his friend's collection. I know he's been doing some CGC stuff. If I could find Matt Maley Ren and Stimpy Mini, I'd insert a slab. Yeah. He's a friend of ours, Matt, who might come on here one night. I have the original cover art he did. Yeah, CGC is way behind. They
Great.
say waiting for 5 months. Do they slab Minicom? I don't know. They slab magazines, don't they, at CGC?
Yeah.
Okay. Because they don't slab treasury editions, because every different size would be a whole new production.
Right.
They'd need new machines to do it on, and they'd need machines to make that size, and there's just not enough treasury editions out there to slab to justify the cost.
I actually need to get some treasury size Mylar.
Yeah. I don't have any of my treasuries in bags. They're just sitting on but they're all beaten up treasuries from the 70s. So.
Right.
Yeah, I was on the Gray Man's birthday stream last weekend, and Chaos and Comics showed up, and he mentioned that CBCS will eventually overtake CBCS will eventually overtake CGC as the premier service. Not yet, but they soon will be, and as soon as they can start getting the CBCS books at the same price level as the CGC, it's going to flip really fast, because people are getting tired of CGC's lack of quality.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen online or in a magazine someone slab an issue of Snatch by Crumb. That was a mini. Okay. I think you can put smaller stuff in, because you can put it in a bag. But like bigger stuff like Treasury Edition, I don't think you can, because they get that interior vacuum sealed bag. I think they can put smaller stuff in. That just popped into my head. But yeah, I don't know. I know a lot of people are mad at CGC, but that's also because people are often mad at the most popular thing. And when something else gets more popular, because when something's popular by definition, of course, a lot of people like it. But also a lot of people, since it's well known, dislike it. So if it flips, it could, even if it flips, people stop.
There are areas where I think that they're starting to fail, and one is it's because there's a growing market for foreign editions, and the foreign edition guys don't want to. They don't take their stuff to CGC anymore. They're going almost exclusively with CBCS, because the CGC guys don't know how to properly identify foreign comics, either by cover art or interior, and they mislabel them. They give it the wrong country.
Okay.
So in other words, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Oh well, we should sign off now.
Mm-hmm.
We're almost at 9, and we're reading at 8:45. Going for 2:47. All right. Any final thoughts or comments from anyone? It was nice to see Tim.
Yeah.
I might go on the Graphic Man's channel again tomorrow. He wanted to do a show. Still don't have a theme. He wanted me to come up with a theme, so I'm probably just going to go through the collection.
Marvel 10th anniversary covers. There's your theme.
No, I said it probably. I want to pontificate while I show stuff.
You want me to shoot? You want me to? I can always send you some JPEGs of the Reed Rippin slab.
Yeah, you're looking for royalties?
Nah.
Let's put it out in the public domain. Yeah. Everybody do their own version of Reed Rippin slab.
Yep.
If it's a jungle comic,
fun game.
Yeah, if Jared sends you a jungle comic, then rip that one.
With leopards getting killed.
All right, we're signing off, Caroline. So we will catch you later. You can doze off all you want now. All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.